The crystal chandelier light caught the edge of a cracked porcelain spoon as Marcus Chen placed it gently on the table between three men in black suits and a terrified woman. "Wrong table, wrong day, gentlemen," he said, his voice carrying the quiet authority of someone who'd seen too much to be intimidated by expensive suits. The entire restaurant held its breath. What happened next would transform a simple maintenance worker into a viral legend. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The Golden Pearl restaurant hummed with the kind of energy that only came from mixing wealth wine and whispered secrets. Crystal chandeliers cast honey-colored light across tables dressed in Egyptian cotton, while a string quartet played Vivaldi from a corner alcove designed specifically for acoustic perfection. The maitre d' moved between tables like a conductor, orchestrating an evening where a single bottle of wine could cost more than most people's monthly rent. Marcus Chen wasn't supposed to be there. At 36, he inhabited the invisible spaces of the city's infrastructure. The guy who showed up after closing to fix commercial ovens, recalibrate fire suppression systems, or replace faulty sensors in walk-in freezers. His company, Chen Industrial Maintenance, consisted of himself, a van full of tools, and a reputation for being the one contractor who actually showed up when promised. Tonight's job was routine: inspect the kitchen's new automated fire suppression system, verify the emergency exit mechanisms, and sign off on the safety compliance forms that would keep the Golden Pearl's insurance rates from skyrocketing. Simple work that paid well enough to keep his 8-year-old daughter Emma in her art classes and martial arts lessons. Emma sat at a small table near the emergency exit, her backpack full of homework beside her, carefully folding origami butterflies from the restaurant's cloth napkins. The staff had given her a basket of them, amused by the serious little girl who could turn their fancy linens into delicate art. She'd already made 7 butterflies, lining them up like a small army across the table's marble surface. "Daddy, look," she called out softly, holding up her latest creation. "This one has perfect wings." Marcus glanced over from where he was photographing a grease-caked sprinkler head, his worn denim jacket contrasting sharply with the restaurant's opulence. Around his wrist, a simple red string bracelet caught the light, Emma's morning ritual tied there with the solemnity only an 8-year-old could muster. "It's for protection," she'd explained that morning, her fingers careful as she knotted it. "Mrs. Zheng at Chinese school says red thread connects people who are meant to help each other. So if you meet someone who needs help today, you'll know." The bracelet felt warm against his pulse now as he documented the safety violations with methodical precision. 3 years of doing this work had trained his eye to spot danger in the smallest details: a sticky exit door that took 2 seconds too long to open, a sprinkler head so clogged it would be useless in a fire, an electrical panel with scorch marks that suggested overloaded circuits. He'd learned to see these things the hard way. Marcus's wife Grace had died 4 years ago in an apartment fire in Chinatown, a fire that started from faulty wiring the landlord had known about for months, a fire that spread through halls where the sprinklers had been disconnected to save on water bills, a fire that killed 12 people because the emergency exits had been chained shut to prevent homeless people from sleeping in the stairwells. The landlord was Titan Properties, a company that owned 43 buildings across the city, all of them ticking time bombs of deferred maintenance and criminal negligence. They'd paid a fine. 12 people dead, and they'd written a check that probably came from petty cash. Marcus had been a different man then, a cybersecurity consultant for Fortune 500 companies, pulling down 6 figures to protect corporate secrets from hackers. He'd tried to use those skills to dig into Titan Properties after Grace's death, had found evidence of systematic safety violations across their entire portfolio. But money bought better lawyers than justice could afford. The case died in court, smothered by procedures and technicalities. So Marcus became someone else, someone who could prevent the next fire, the next tragedy, someone who took photos of every violation, filed reports with multiple agencies, created paper trails that even Titan's lawyers couldn't erase. Someone who fixed broken things because he couldn't fix the broken system that had taken his wife. "Sir, the maintenance access is through the back." The voice belonged to the restaurant manager, a thin man named Harrison, whose smile never reached his eyes. He looked at Marcus's jacket, at the tool bag slung over his shoulder, at the clipboard thick with inspection forms, and his expression made it clear that Marcus was disrupting the carefully cultivated ambiance. "I need to check the emergency exits from the inside," Marcus replied, keeping his voice neutral. Fire code requires. Yes, yes, I'm aware. Harrison waved dismissively. Just please be discreet. We have important guests tonight. Marcus nodded. Used to being treated like an inconvenience. To people like Harrison, he was just another service worker, as invisible as the plumbing until something went wrong. But as he moved through the dining room, his trained eye caught something that had nothing to do with fire safety. Table 17 was wrong. 3 men in identical black suits had positioned themselves around a single woman, and everything about their arrangement screamed tactical positioning. They'd chosen the corner table backs to the walls with clear sight lines to both exits. The biggest one, built like a linebacker gone to seed, sat facing the room, his jacket unbuttoned for easy access to whatever was making that subtle bulge under his left armpit. The second man, lean and nervous with the kind of energy that came from too much coffee or too much cocaine, had positioned himself to block the view from the overhead security camera. He kept touching his ear, adjusting what looked like a flesh-colored communication device. The third man stood rather than sat casual, but ready his position, cutting off any direct path the woman might take toward the kitchen or restrooms. And the woman, she was terrified. Marcus recognized the look. It was the same expression Grace had worn in the last photo taken of her at her office Christmas party 2 days before the fire. She'd been cornered then by her boss, a man who thought his position entitled him to more than professional relationships. Grace had been too polite to make a scene, too worried about her job to report it. Marcus had learned since then that politeness was a luxury victims couldn't afford. The woman at table 17 wore a simple navy dress, professional, but not flashy, the kind of outfit someone wore to be taken seriously rather than noticed. Her hands lay flat on the table, trembling slightly, her wedding ring catching the light as she tried to keep them still. Her purse sat in her lap, clutched like a life preserver. She was Asian, maybe 40, with the kind of careful composure that suggested years of practice at managing difficult situations. But this situation was beyond managing. Her eyes darted around the room, looking for help that wasn't coming. The other diners were lost in their own worlds, conversations flowing over expensive wine, nobody noticing the drama unfolding in the corner. Nobody except Marcus. He moved closer, pretending to inspect an exit sign, his phone out, as if checking compliance codes. But the camera was recording, capturing the scene at table 17. "The files, Ms. Kim," the big man was saying, his voice low but carrying. "No more games. You took something that doesn't belong to you." "I don't know what you're talking about." The woman's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the fear underneath. "I'm just an accountant." An accountant who copied 3 years of financial records onto a flash drive. The nervous man leaned forward, his fingers drumming against the table. "Records that belong to our client. Records that could be misinterpreted." The standing man shifted position slightly, his movement drawing Marcus's attention to the kitchen door. 2 more men in dark suits had just entered through the service entrance, taking positions that would cut off any escape route through the back. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a trap. Marcus thought about Emma sitting 20 feet away, still folding her butterflies. He thought about Grace, who died because nobody had spoken up about danger when it mattered. He thought about all the violations he documented that came too late to save anyone. His hand found the red thread around his wrist. "Excuse me." Marcus's voice cut through the restaurant's ambient noise like a blade through silk. He approached table 17 with the measured pace of someone who belonged there, his clipboard held like a shield, his phone still recording. The big man's head snapped toward him, irritation flashing across his features. "This is a private conversation." "I can see that." Marcus set his clipboard on an adjacent table, making sure his phone's camera had a clear view. "But you're blocking a fire exit, which is a code violation I need to document." It was technically true. The standing man's position did partially obstruct the path to the emergency exit. Marcus had learned that the best lies were mostly truth. "We'll move in a minute," the nervous man said, his hand twitching toward his jacket. "I'm afraid that's not how safety inspections work." Marcus pulled out the cracked porcelain spoon he'd picked up from a bus station, a nervous habit from years of needing something to fidget with during stressful system diagnostics. He rolled it between his fingers, the crack catching the light. "The lady seems uncomfortable. Are you comfortable, ma'am?" The woman looked at him, hope flickering in her eyes. No, I'm not." "She's fine," the big man growled, standing up. He was even larger than Marcus had estimated, 6'4" at least, with the kind of bulk that came from steroids rather than genetics. "And you need to mind your own business, maintenance man." The last two words were meant to be dismissive to remind Marcus of his place in the food chain. But Marcus had stopped caring about food chains the day he'd identified Grace's body at the morgue. Interesting. Marcus angled the spoon using its surface like a mirror to watch the two men who'd entered through the kitchen. They were moving closer, trying to look casual. "You know what's really interesting? The way you've positioned yourselves to block all three cameras in this section. Very professional, almost like you've done this before." The nervous man's hand moved to his ear, probably alerting the others that they had a problem. The standing man took a step toward Marcus, his intention clear. That's when Emma's voice rang out across the restaurant. "Daddy, are you making friends?" Every head in the dining room turned toward the little girl with her army of origami butterflies. She stood beside her table backpack over one shoulder, watching the scene with the kind of innocent curiosity that made every adult in the room suddenly hyper-aware of what was happening. "Just talking to some people, sweetheart," Marcus called back, keeping his voice light. "Stay right there." But Emma was already walking over her butterflies gathered in her small hands. She moved with the confidence of a child who'd never learned to be afraid of adults, who still believed the world was fundamentally safe. "Are you having a party?" she asked the woman at table 17. "You look sad. Do you want a butterfly? They're good luck." She held out one of her creations, a delicate thing made from white linen that seemed to glow in the chandelier light. The woman's composure cracked. Tears welled in her eyes as she accepted the butterfly with shaking hands. "Thank you, sweetie. It's beautiful." "Why is she crying?" Emma looked up at the big man with the directness only children could manage. "Did you make her cry?" The dining room had gone completely silent. Every conversation had stopped, every fork suspended midway to its owner's mouth. The string quartet had even paused between movements, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Someone at table 12 had their phone out recording. "Your daughter should go back to her table," the big man said to Marcus, but his voice had lost its edge. Nothing destroyed tough guy intimidation faster than a child's innocence. "Emma, go sit down," Marcus said gently. "I'll be there in a minute." "But the lady is sad." "I know, baby. That's why I'm going to help her." Emma looked between the adults, her 8-year-old mind processing the tension she couldn't quite understand. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out another piece of red thread. "Here," she said to the woman. "This is for protection. My daddy has one too. See?" She pointed to Marcus's wrist. "It means you're connected now. He has to help you because the thread says so." She tied the red thread around the woman's wrist, with the same careful attention she'd given Marcus's that morning. The woman, Ms. Kim, watched with wonder as the little girl worked this unexpected ally in her moment of crisis. "There," Emma announced. "Now you're safe." She walked back to her table, satisfied with her intervention, leaving behind a dining room that suddenly felt like a theater where everyone had forgotten their lines. Marcus looked at the three men, then at Ms. Kim with her red thread bracelet, then at the growing number of phones pointed their direction. "Gentlemen," he said, loud enough for every phone to pick up his voice, "I believe the lady would like to leave now. And you're going to let her." The big man's face flushed red. "You have no idea what you're getting involved in." "Actually, I do." Marcus held up his own phone, showing the recording time, 7 minutes 23 seconds. "Corporate intimidation, preventing free movement, implied threats. That's enough for assault charges, and that's before we get into whatever financial crimes you're trying to cover up." "You think you're some kind of hero?" The nervous man stood up, his hand moving inside his jacket. "No." Marcus's voice was calm, almost sad. "I'm just someone who knows what happens when people stay quiet about dangerous situations. Someone dies. It's always someone who didn't deserve it, someone who just wanted to go home to their family." He looked directly at Ms. Kim. "Do you want to leave?" "Yes," she whispered. "Please." "Then stand up and walk to the exit. These gentlemen are going to stay seated." The standing man moved to block her path. "She's not going anywhere with those files." "Files?" Marcus turned the cracked spoon in his fingers, the repetitive motion keeping his hands steady. What files would those be? The ones documenting financial crimes, the ones that prove what exactly? Embezzlement money, laundering? Or are we talking about something worse? Safety violations, maybe, the kind that get people killed. Ms. Kim's sharp intake of breath told him he'd hit close to the mark. You were the one, she said suddenly, staring at Marcus with recognition dawning in her eyes. You're Marcus Chen. Your wife died in the Chinatown fire. You've been filing all those safety complaints against Titan Properties. The name hit the room like a thunderclap. Titan Properties. The company that owned half the low-income housing in the city. The company that had been in the news for suspicious fires in buildings they wanted to demolish for development. The company that always seemed to have the fire department's inspection reports come back clean despite multiple complaints. Shut up, the big man snarled at Ms. Kim, but she was already standing emboldened by the cameras by Emma's butterfly still clutched in her hand by the red thread around her wrist. I'm Catherine Kim, she announced to the room, to the phones, to the internet that would soon make her famous. I'm a forensic accountant. I was hired to audit Titan Properties books, and I found evidence that they've been bribing city inspectors for over a decade. I found payments to have sprinkler systems disconnected, to have fire exits chained, to have... The nervous man lunged for her, but Marcus was already moving. The cracked porcelain spoon became an extension of his hand, 3 years of martial arts training from his youth flooding back like muscle memory. He caught the man's wrist at exactly the right pressure point, the spoon's edge pressing into the nerve cluster between the radius and ulna. The man's hand went completely numb, his fingers releasing their grip on Catherine's arm. The big man came at Marcus like a freight train, but freight trains were predictable. They moved in straight lines. Marcus sidestepped, using the man's momentum against him, guiding him into a table that sent plates and wine glasses crashing to the floor. The standing man reached for something in his jacket, but Marcus was faster. He grabbed a cloth napkin from the nearest table, twisted it into a rope, and in one fluid motion had it wrapped around the man's wrist, pinning his hand inside his jacket. Stop! Harrison, the manager, appeared, his face red with indignation. You're destroying my restaurant. Your restaurant was already destroyed, Marcus said, not taking his eyes off the three men. The moment you let them use it for this. How much did they pay you to look the other way? Harrison's guilty flinch was answer enough. The two men from the kitchen were moving in now, but the dining room had transformed into something they hadn't expected. 20 phones were recording. The live streams had already started. Someone was narrating the scene for their followers in real time. This is insane. Some maintenance guy is fighting off corporate thugs. Oh my God, he just took down 3 guys with a spoon and a napkin. The nervous man cradled his numb hand, backing away. The big man got to his feet slowly, wine dripping from his expensive suit. The standing man finally got his hand free from his jacket, but with so many witnesses, whatever he'd been reaching for stayed hidden. You're going to regret this, the big man said to Marcus. I already have many regrets, Marcus replied. Staying quiet while people get hurt won't be one of them. He held up his phone, showing that he'd just sent the entire recording to someone. That went to 3 journalists, 2 city councilors, and the FBI's corruption hotline. Whatever you were planning to do to Ms. Kim, it's over. The sirens were audible now, growing closer. Someone had called 911. The 5 men looked at each other, calculating their options. They could try to force their way out, but that would mean fighting through a room full of witnesses with cameras. They could stay and try to explain, but that would mean being there when the police arrived. This isn't over, the big man said to Catherine. You can't hide forever. She won't have to, Marcus said, because by tomorrow morning, everyone in the city will know her face, her name, and what she's trying to expose. You've lost the advantage of shadows. Hard to intimidate someone when the whole world is watching. The men left then, moving quickly, but not running, maintaining the fiction that they were just business associates leaving after a tense meeting. The 2 from the kitchen disappeared back the way they'd come. The 3 from table 17 walked out the front door just as the first police car pulled up. Catherine Kim sat down heavily, the adrenaline leaving her shaky. Emma appeared at her elbow, offering another butterfly. You were very brave, the little girl said solemnly. Both of you. Daddy doesn't usually fight people anymore, but sometimes he has to when someone's in trouble. Any more? Catherine looked at Marcus with curiosity. Marcus was saved from answering by the arrival of the police. 2 officers entered, hands on their weapons, taking in the overturned table, the scattered dishes, the room full of people with phones out. "Someone want to tell me what happened here?" the lead officer asked. What followed was 20 minutes of chaos as multiple witnesses tried to tell the story at once. The live stream videos were played and replayed. Catherine Kim showed her credentials and explained about the audit, the threats, the files she'd copied that proved Titan Properties had been systematically violating safety codes for profit. Marcus stayed quiet through most of it, sitting with Emma, helping her refold some butterflies that had gotten crumpled in the excitement. But the officers kept coming back to him. "So you're saying you subdued 3 men with—" The officer checked his notes. "A spoon and a napkin." "They subdued themselves," Marcus said. "I just helped them realize violence wasn't their best option." "And you just happen to know exactly how to do that." Marcus shrugged. "I fix things for a living. Sometimes that means fixing situations before they break completely." The officer looked skeptical, but the video evidence was clear. Marcus hadn't thrown a punch. He'd used minimal force to prevent an assault. Everything he'd done fell under defense of others. "We'll need you to come to the station to give a full statement," the officer said. "Can I bring my daughter?" "Of course." As they prepared to leave, Catherine Kim approached Marcus. The red thread was still around her wrist, slightly frayed but intact. "Thank you," she said. "You saved my life. Those men, I know who sent them. They wouldn't have let me leave with what I know." "What exactly do you know?" Marcus asked quietly. Catherine looked around, then leaned closer. "Titan Properties isn't just bribing inspectors. They're burning down their own buildings for insurance money. Buildings with people inside. I have proof of 8 fires in the last 2 years, all in buildings they wanted to demolish. Your wife's building was one of them." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd suspected, had believed it in his gut, but believing and knowing were different things. "The flash drive," he said. "You have it." Catherine nodded, patting her purse. "Multiple copies in multiple locations now. After tonight, I'm not taking chances." "Good." She hesitated, then asked, "Your daughter said you don't usually fight anymore. Were you military police?" "Nothing that official." Marcus watched Emma showing her butterflies to one of the officers, the man's tough demeanor melting in the face of her enthusiasm. "I used to teach self-defense, conflict de-escalation, how to protect people without becoming the threat yourself." "Why did you stop?" "Because I couldn't protect the one person who mattered most." He touched the red thread on his wrist. "Now I just try to fix things before they break. Tonight you were about to break." Catherine's eyes filled with tears again. "I'm going to make them pay, for your wife, for all of them." "Just be careful," Marcus said, "and stay visible. Darkness is where they're comfortable. Stay in the light where everyone can see you." Harrison, the manager, was being questioned by police, his earlier arrogance replaced by nervous stammering. The restaurant had emptied except for staff and investigators. The golden ambiance had been shattered, replaced by the harsh reality of crime scene tape and evidence markers. "Daddy," Emma tugged on his sleeve. "Are we heroes now?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "No, baby, we're just people who helped when someone needed it." "But everyone was recording. We're going to be on the internet." "Probably. Will it help the sad lady?" Marcus looked over at Catherine Kim, who was showing something on her phone to a detective, her posture straightening with every word she spoke. The woman who'd been terrified an hour ago was transforming into someone else, a witness, a warrior, a voice for the dead. "Yeah," he said. "I think it will." They left the Golden Pearl as the crime scene investigators arrived. Emma held Marcus's hand, her other arm cradling her collection of butterflies. The red thread on his wrist caught the streetlight as they walked to their car. "Daddy," Emma said as he buckled her into her booster seat, "Mom would be proud of you." Marcus's throat tightened. "What makes you say that?" "Because you used your inside voice even when you were fighting. Mom always said the strongest people don't need to yell." He kissed the top of her head, unable to speak for a moment. As they drove home, Marcus's phone buzzed with notifications. The videos were already spreading across social media. Maintenance worker saves whistleblower was trending. Someone had isolated the moment when Emma gave Catherine the butterfly, adding the caption, "Not all heroes wear capes, some wear red thread." But Marcus wasn't thinking about the viral fame that was about to descend on them. He was thinking about Grace, about the fire that had taken her, about the possibility that it hadn't been negligence but murder. He was thinking about Catherine Kim, brave enough to steal evidence of corporate crimes, who'd almost paid the ultimate price for her courage. He was thinking about the system that let companies like Titan Properties operate with impunity, buying their way out of consequences while families buried their dead. And he was thinking about the cracked porcelain spoon in his pocket, a broken thing that had proved useful when it mattered most. Sometimes the broken things were the ones that saved you. Sometimes the maintenance man was the only one who could see what needed fixing. And sometimes a little girl with paper butterflies and red thread could remind everyone what protection really meant. Tomorrow would bring interviews and investigations, lawyers, and threats, fame he didn't want, and attention he couldn't avoid. But tonight, he was just a father driving his daughter home. The red thread around his wrist, a reminder that connections between people were the only things that really mattered. The dashboard clock read 9:47 p.m. 3 hours ago, he'd been nobody special, just another invisible worker keeping the city's infrastructure running. Now he was about to become the face of something larger, a movement, a reckoning, a long overdue accounting for those who profited from others' suffering. He didn't want it, but want and need were different things. Grace had needed someone to speak for her when she could no longer speak. Catherine Kim had needed someone to stand for her when she couldn't stand alone. Emma needed a father who showed her that doing right was more important than doing nothing. And maybe, just maybe, the city needed to see that sometimes the maintenance man was the most important person in the room, the one who could see what was broken and wasn't afraid to fix it. The red thread caught the passing streetlights as they drove through the city, a thin line of connection and protection, fragile but unbroken, just like hope itself. The video hit 10 million views before midnight. Marcus discovered this when Emma's school called at 6:47 a.m., suggesting he might want to keep her home for a few days until the situation calms down. The situation, as Principal Martinez delicately put it, was the crowd of reporters currently surrounding PS 84's main entrance, all hoping to interview the butterfly girl, who'd become the heart of a story that was reshaping the city's understanding of corporate corruption. "Daddy, there are people on our lawn," Emma announced from the living room window, still in her pajamas with her hair sticking up at odd angles. A lot of people, with cameras. Marcus peered through the blinds. She was understating it. Their small rental house in Queens was under siege. News vans lined the street like a convoy. Reporters clustered on the sidewalk, held back only by the property line, and two uniformed officers who looked overwhelmed. His phone hadn't stopped buzzing since 4 a.m. 17 missed calls from reporters, 23 from numbers he didn't recognize, 41 text messages, and his email inbox had given up counting after 999 plus. But it was the one call from Catherine Kim that mattered. "They killed someone," her voice message said, shaky but determined. "Last night after we left, Ahmad Patel, another accountant at the firm who helped me copy the files. They made it look like a suicide, but Ahmad was Muslim, devout. He would never—" "Marcus, they're not going to stop. The files I have, they're worse than I told you. It's not just Titan Properties. It's a whole network. Construction companies, inspection agencies, city officials. We pulled a thread and the whole fabric is coming apart." Marcus played the message twice, then deleted it. If they were willing to kill Ahmad Patel, they were certainly willing to tap phones, hack accounts, do whatever it took to contain the exposure. "Daddy, why aren't we going to school?" Emma appeared in the doorway, now dressed in her favorite purple dress with matching butterfly clips in her hair. She'd dressed herself for school, not understanding why they couldn't just walk through the crowd like normal. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Is it because of last night? Because we helped the sad lady?" "Yeah." "Are we in trouble?" Marcus knelt down to her level. "No, baby. But sometimes when you do the right thing, it makes other people upset. And those people might want to, talk to us about it." Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all adult problems. Like when Jessie got mad because I told Mrs. Chen she was cheating on the spelling test. Exactly like that, but bigger. "Oh." She thought for a moment. "Do we need more red thread?" Before Marcus could answer, his phone rang. Unknown number, but something made him answer. "Mr. Chen." This is Special Agent Sarah Volkov with the FBI. We need to talk about Catherine Kim and Ahmad Patel. I heard about Ahmad. Then you understand the severity of the situation. Can you come to our field office? We can send a car. With all due respect, Agent Volkov, I have reporters on my lawn and a daughter to protect. If you want to talk, you come to me. There was a pause. Fair enough. We'll be there in an hour. Mr. Chen, the video from last night has had unexpected consequences. The Justice Department is involved now. The governor's office. What you did is opened a door we've been trying to open for 3 years. And Ahmad Patel died because of it. Ahmad Patel died because he was brave enough to help expose killers. Don't let his sacrifice be wasted. She hung up, leaving Marcus staring at his phone. Through the window, he could see a reporter doing a stand-up with his house in the background, probably describing him as the mysterious maintenance worker with the deadly spoon skills, or some equally ridiculous characterization. Emma, he said, making a decision. Want to go on an adventure? Her face lit up. Yes, where? First, we're going to sneak out the back door like ninjas. Then, we're going to visit some old friends of Daddy's, people who can help keep us safe. Are they ninjas too? Sort of. 20 minutes later, they slipped out through the back garden, Emma wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses that made her look like a tiny spy. Mrs. Chen from next door, a different Chen, no relation, had agreed to let them cut through her yard to the alley where Marcus had parked his van the night before. They made it 3 blocks before a sharp-eyed reporter spotted them at a red light. Mr. Chen? Mr. Shen? How does it feel to be called a hero? Marcus kept the windows up, doors locked, but Emma was fascinated by the attention. Daddy, that lady knows your name. Yeah, baby, a lot of people know our names now. Is that bad? He thought about Ahmad Patel dead for the crime of photocopying documents. It's complicated. They drove through Queens toward Brooklyn. Marcus taking random turns to lose any followers, his old paranoia skills rusty but functional. The city looked different in the morning light when you knew people might be hunting you. Every black sedan became suspicious. Every van might be surveillance or worse. The Crimson Phoenix Gym sat between a bubble tea shop and a Vietnamese restaurant in Sunset Park, its neon sign dark in the morning sun. Marcus hadn't been here in 4 years, not since Grace's funeral, when his mentor, Master Liu, had found him drunk and sobbing in the parking lot at 3 a.m., unable to face a world without her. You have a daughter, Liu had said then. She needs her father, not this ghost you're becoming. Marcus had thrown a sloppy punch. Grief and whiskey making him stupid. Liu had deflected it easily, then held him while he cried like a child 32 years old and completely broken. He hadn't been back since. Now the door opened before he could knock, and there stood Master Liu, 73 years old, and still moving like water, still seeing everything with eyes that had witnessed revolution, exile, rebuilding, and loss. Marcus, he said simply, I saw the video. Sifu, I know what you need. Liu's eyes moved to Emma, and his stern face softened. And who is this butterfly princess? That Emma, normally shy with strangers, stepped forward with unusual confidence. I'm Emma Chen. I made butterflies for the sad lady. Are you a ninja? Liu laughed, a sound Marcus hadn't heard in years. Better, I'm a teacher. Come inside, little butterfly. We have chocolate milk and many questions. The gym hadn't changed. The same mirrors lined the walls, reflecting the morning light across worn mats that had absorbed decades of sweat and determination. The same photos covered the Eastern Wall students at tournaments, demonstrations, celebrations. Marcus was in several of them, younger, smiling, unaware that life was about to teach him harder lessons than any opponent could. The others are coming, Liu said, leading them to his office in the back. When they saw the video, they knew you'd need us. Sifu, I didn't mean to say. To what? Stand up for someone who needed help. Use the skills I taught you to protect instead of destroy. Liu poured tea from a pot that was always brewing, always ready. You honored everything I ever taught you last night. A man is dead because of what I did. A man is dead because evil men killed him. You didn't create their evil, Marcus. You just exposed it. Emma had found a stack of martial arts magazines and was carefully cutting out pictures of female fighters, arranging them like paper dolls. She worked with the same focused intensity, She brought to her butterflies, creating her own stories in whispered narration. She's like her mother, Lou observed, sees the world as it should be, not just as it is. Grace would have handled last night differently. Grace would have been proud. She always said you were too careful with your strength, too afraid of what you could do instead of what you should do. The door chimed and voices filled the gym. Marcus recognized them immediately. His old training partners, people he'd sweated and bled with for years before Grace's death had driven him into isolation. Tommy Nguyen entered first, still built like a brick wall despite being a pediatric nurse now. Behind him came Diana Foster, who'd parlayed her martial arts training into a career as a stuntwoman, currently sporting purple hair and a grin that had gotten them both into trouble more times than Marcus could count. James Okonkwo followed his corporate lawyer suit, incongruous in the gym, probably having come straight from his office. The maintenance man returns, oh, Diana said, but her joke was gentle, her eyes concerned. That video, Marcus, the way you moved, you haven't lost a step. I haven't trained in 4 years. Your body remembers what your mind tries to forget, Master Liu said. Show me your hands. Marcus held them out. They were steady calloused from work, the red thread still around his left wrist. Liu examined them like a doctor, noting the small cuts from the cracked porcelain spoon, the bruising on his knuckles from when he'd deflected the big man's grab. You held back, Liu said. You could have seriously hurt those men. They were just doing a job. So were the guards at concentration camps, James said, his lawyer's mind always cutting to uncomfortable truths. Following orders isn't an excuse for evil. Tommy had knelt beside Emma, admiring her picture arrangements. These are really good. You have an artist's eye. My mom was an artist, Emma said proudly. She painted birds. Daddy keeps them all in his room. Marcus felt the familiar stab of grief, but before he could deflect, his phone rang. Agent Volkov. Mr. Chen, you're not at your house. Did you really expect me to sit there like a target? Fair point. Where are you? Marcus looked at Liu, who nodded. Crimson Phoenix Gym in Sunset Park. You have the address. We'll be there in 20 minutes. Mr. Chen, there's been another development. Catherine Kim is missing. The words hit like ice water. What do you mean missing? She didn't show up for protective custody this morning. Her apartment's been tossed. Professional job. No blood, but also no Catherine. Marcus's mind raced. They took her. That's our assumption. Mr. Chen, whatever she told you about those files, we need to know. Lives are at stake. 20 minutes, Marcus said, and hung up. The gym had gone quiet. Everyone had heard his side of the conversation. It's happening again, Marcus said to no one in particular. People are dying because someone stood up to them. No, Liu said firmly. People are dying because killers are killing. You don't blame the light for revealing the darkness. Pretty sure the darkness blames the light, Diana said. Marcus, that video has 50 million views now. The whole city is watching. Hell, the whole country. You can't put that genie back in the bottle. They have Catherine Kim, the woman with the evidence. Then we get her back, Tommy said simply. That's what we do, right? We protect people. We're not vigilantes, James warned. There are legal ways. Legal ways got Ahmad Patel killed, Marcus interrupted. Legal ways let Titan Properties burn buildings with people inside. Legal ways are what they're counting on because they own the people who make legal decisions. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, just a photo. Catherine Kim tied to a chair in what looked like a warehouse. A copy of today's newspaper in the frame to prove it was current. Her face was bruised but defiant, the red thread still visible on her wrist. Below the photo, a message, "The Butterfly Man has 1 hour to come alone. Pier 47. Bring all copies of the files or she burns like your wife did." The gym erupted in angry voices, but Marcus heard none of it. He was staring at the photo, at the red thread on Catherine's wrist, at the look in her eyes that said she was ready to die rather than give up what she knew. "Emma," he said quietly, "I need you to stay here with Master Liu." His daughter looked up from her pictures. "Are you going to help the sad lady again?" "Yeah, baby." "Then you need this." She pulled a fresh piece of red thread from her pocket. She always had them like a magician with scarves, and tied it around his wrist next to the one from yesterday. "Double protection, because it's dangerous." How do you know it's dangerous? Because you have your scary face on, the one from when the bad men were at Mommy's funeral. Marcus froze. What bad men? The ones in the black car who watched us at the cemetery. You made me go inside with Aunt Linda, but I saw them. You talked to them, and then they left, and you had your scary face for weeks. 4 years ago, the day they buried Grace. Marcus remembered now Titan Properties representatives coming to offer their condolences, and a settlement if he signed a non-disclosure agreement. He told them what they could do with their money, had made it clear that if they came near his daughter again, he'd kill them all. They'd believed him, but that was before last night, before the video, before he'd shown the world what he was capable of. Daddy has to go, he told Emma. But I'll be back. Promise. He couldn't lie to her. I'll try my best. That's not a promise. No, it's not. She considered this with that devastating honesty children possessed. Then she hugged him tight, whispering, "Be like water, Daddy. That's what Mommy used to say when you trained. Be like water." Grace's words in Emma's voice. It almost broke him. Master Liu stepped forward. "You're not going alone." The message said, "Come alone." It didn't say stay alone. Liu's smile was sharp as a blade. Besides, they threaten one of my students, they threaten me, and I haven't had a good fight in years. Sifu, you're 73, and I've been dangerous for 70 of those years. Tommy Diana James, you know what to do. They moved without question, a team responding to unspoken orders. Tommy went to a cabinet and pulled out equipment Marcus recognized tactical gear from Liu's military days, updated and maintained because Liu believed in being prepared for everything. Diana was already on her phone calling in favors from her stunt crew. "Yeah, Pier 47, bring the drone rig and the thermal cameras. No, this isn't a movie. This is real." James had his laptop out, fingers flying over the keyboard. Pier 47 is owned by a shell company that traces back to, surprise, surprise, Titan Properties. It's been closed for renovation for 6 months, but no work's been done. Perfect place for disappearing someone. Agent Volkov arrived while they were preparing, taking in the scene with professional assessment. She was younger than her voice had suggested, maybe 35, with the kind of alertness that came from seeing too much too young. "This is not how we do things," she said, looking at the tactical gear. "Then how do you do things?" Marcus asked. "Because your way got Ahmad Patel killed and Catherine Kim kidnapped. We follow the law. The law they've bought." She had no answer for that. Instead, she pulled out a tablet showing Marcus a file. "This is what Catherine Kim found. We managed to recover it from her cloud backup before they deleted it." The file was devastating. Financial records showing Titan Properties had been systematically burning their own buildings for insurance money. But worse, much worse, were the communications showing they knew people were inside. They'd specifically chosen buildings with the most vulnerable tenants, elderly, disabled, undocumented immigrants who wouldn't be missed or mourned by anyone with power. 8 buildings, 43 deaths. All murder disguised as tragic accidents. Grace's building was 3rd on the list. "They killed her," Marcus said, his voice hollow. "They actually killed her." "They killed all of them," Volkov said. "And they're going to keep killing unless we stop them. But we need Catherine Kim alive to testify. She's the only one who can authenticate these documents, explain how she found them. Make a jury understand what they mean. Then we get her back. You can't just watch me." Marcus stood, the red threads on his wrist catching the light. 2 threads now, double protection, as Emma had said. 1 for Grace, 1 for Catherine. 2 women whose lives had been touched by Titan Properties' evil. "You have 40 minutes, Volkov said. "If you're going to do something stupid, at least let me help. You just said you follow the law. I also took an oath to protect and serve. Sometimes those 2 things conflict." She pulled out her service weapon, checked it, holstered it again. "Besides, my sister lived in one of those buildings, the 5th one on the list. She got out, but her neighbor didn't. Mrs. Petrovsky, 78 years old, still sent Christmas cards to family in Russia every year, died of smoke inhalation because the fire exits were chained." The room was quiet for a moment, everyone recognizing the weight of personal loss, the kind that transformed duty into mission. "All right, Marcus said. "Here's what we're going to do." Pier 47 stretched into the Hudson River like a broken finger. its abandoned warehouses dark against the morning sky. Marcus approached alone as demanded, but he knew he wasn't really alone. Diana's stunt crew had drones in the air, invisible at their altitude, but watching everything through thermal cameras. Tommy and two other students from the gym were approaching by water in a borrowed boat. James was in a van 3 blocks away, monitoring police channels and ready to call in cavalry if needed. And Master Liu was somewhere Marcus couldn't see him, which meant he was exactly where he needed to be. The main warehouse door was open, an obvious invitation. Marcus entered, his footsteps echoing in the vast space. Sunlight filtered through broken skylights, creating patterns of light and shadow across the concrete floor. Catherine Kim sat in the center of the space, tied to a metal chair. She was conscious but exhausted, her face showing the signs of a sleepless night and rough treatment. The red thread on her wrist was stained with blood from where she'd struggled against her restraints. "Marcus," she said, her voice cracked but strong. "You shouldn't have come. Couldn't leave you here. It's a trap." "I know." The big man from the restaurant emerged from the shadows along with 6 others. Not the nervous man or the standing man from last night. They'd probably been arrested. These were new players, harder, more professional. The kind of men who didn't make threats because they didn't need to. "Mr. Chen," the big man said, "you've caused us considerable trouble. Just getting started. Tough talk for a maintenance man. I fix things. You're broken. Seems like a natural fit." The big man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Do you have the files? Do you have a name? Seems rude to die without knowing who killed me." "Frank Morrison, head of security for Titan Properties." The same Frank Morrison who signed off on the fire safety reports for 8 buildings that mysteriously burned down. Morrison's smile faded. "You've done your homework." "Catherine did the homework. I'm just here for the practical exam." 7 against 1. "You like those odds?" Marcus touched the red threads on his wrist. "I've had worse." "Your wife didn't think so." The words were meant to make him angry, make him sloppy. 3 months ago, they would have worked. But Master Liu had taught him something years ago. Anger is energy. You can let it explode and destroy you, or you can direct it and destroy your enemies. "You're right," Marcus said calmly. Grace died alone, afraid, betrayed by a system that was supposed to protect her. But she also died knowing she was loved, which is more than you'll get to say. Morrison pulled out a gun. "Enough talk, the files." "I don't have them." "Then she burns." One of the men was already pouring gasoline around Catherine's chair, the smell filling the warehouse, just like they'd done to the buildings, just like they'd done to Grace. "You're going to burn her either way," Marcus said. "We both know that. Can't leave witnesses." "Smart man. So why come?" "To tell you something." Marcus pulled out his phone, showing it was recording live streaming. "We're live. 40,000 people are watching right now. They heard you admit your name. They heard you admit to the fires. They're seeing you threaten to burn an innocent woman alive." Morrison fired, but Marcus was already moving. The bullet sparked off the concrete where he'd been standing as he rolled behind a pillar. "Cut the stream," Morrison shouted. "Can't," Marcus called out. "It's not just my phone. There are 12 different cameras in here all streaming, drones overhead, boats in the water. You're surrounded by witnesses you can't see." It was partially a bluff. There were only 3 drones and the boat was still 5 minutes out. But Morrison didn't know that. "Kill them both," Morrison ordered. That's when Master Liu made his entrance. The old man dropped from the rafters like gravity had forgotten him, landing silently behind the man with the gasoline. One precise strike, and the man crumpled unconscious before he hit the ground. The gas can rolled away, spilling its contents harmlessly across the concrete. 2 men rushed Liu, probably thinking a 73-year-old man would be easy prey. They learned otherwise when he redirected their momentum into each other, their heads colliding with a sound like coconuts cracking. They went down in a tangle of limbs. Marcus used the distraction to move the cracked porcelain spoon somehow in his hand again. He didn't remember pulling it out, but muscle memory was funny that way. The nearest gunman was turning toward Liu, exposing his back. Marcus closed the distance in 3 steps, the spoon's edge finding the nerve cluster at the base of the skull. The man dropped his gun, clattering away. Diana's crew rappelled through the skylights, their stunt training making them look like special forces. They didn't engage directly, instead creating chaos. Smoke bombs, flashbangs, the kind of theatrical confusion that made it impossible for Morrison's men to track their targets. Tommy and his team burst through the side door, moving with the coordinated precision of people who'd trained together for years. They weren't trying to win a fight, they were trying to create enough disruption for Marcus to reach Catherine. Morrison was screaming orders, but his men were panicking. They'd expected to torture and kill 2 people in private. Instead, they were in the middle of a very public rescue being watched by thousands. Marcus reached Catherine using a box cutter to slice through her restraints. "Can you run? I can barely stand." "Then I'll carry you." "Behind you." Marcus spun the spoon, coming up instinctively. Morrison was there, gun aimed at Marcus's head, too close to miss. The gun fired, but Marcus wasn't there. He dropped and rolled Leo's training, saving him once again. The bullet whined past, and before Morrison could adjust his aim, a small figure hit him from the side. Emma. She'd followed them, somehow slipped away from whoever was supposed to be watching her. 8 years old and fearless, she'd attacked a man 4 times her size because he was threatening her father. Morrison backhanded her casually, sending her small body flying. She hit the concrete hard, a cry of pain escaping her lips. Something broke inside Marcus. Not broke like the porcelain spoon, broke like a dam releasing years of suppressed rage training and capability. He moved differently now. Not the careful, measured movements of someone trying to minimize harm. This was the Marcus Chen who'd been Interpol's most requested instructor for close-quarters combat. The Marcus Chen who'd once disarmed 3 armed men in a Seoul subway station with nothing but an umbrella. The Marcus Chen that Grace had fallen in love with, dangerous and controlled and absolutely lethal when his family was threatened. Morrison never saw the strikes coming. 7 precise blows in less than 2 seconds, each targeting a different pressure point, delivered with the force of years of grief and rage, finally given purpose. Morrison dropped, his body convulsing from the neurological overload. He'd live, but he'd never be quite right again. Some damage couldn't be fixed. "Emma?" Marcus rushed to his daughter, gathering her small form. She was conscious, crying, a bruise already forming on her cheek. "I'm sorry, Daddy. I followed you. I was scared you wouldn't come back." "It's okay, baby. It's okay." The warehouse was suddenly full of FBI agents, Volkov leading them in with weapons drawn. Morrison's surviving men surrendered immediately, smart enough to know when they were beaten. "You're under arrest," Volkov told Morrison, who was still twitching on the ground. "For kidnapping, attempted murder, conspiracy, and about 40 other charges we'll figure out later." Catherine Kim stood on shaking legs, supported by Tommy. "The files," she said. "Did you get the files prior?" "We have everything," Volkov assured her. "Your testimony plus the evidence is enough to bring down the entire network." Marcus carried Emma out of the warehouse into the morning sun. The media had arrived somehow, helicopters overhead and news vans surrounding the pier. The story was too big to contain now: vigilante justice, corporate corruption, a little girl brave enough to attack armed men to save her father. "Daddy," Emma whispered against his shoulder. "Did we win?" Marcus looked back at the warehouse, where EMTs were treating Catherine, where FBI agents were arresting men who'd burned buildings full of people for profit, where Master Liu stood watching with the satisfaction of a teacher whose student had graduated. "Yeah, baby, we won." But he knew it wasn't over. Titan Properties was just one company. There were others like them, other Frank Morrisons willing to kill for profit. The system that had failed Grace was still broken, still needed fixing. The red threads on his wrist caught the light, one from yesterday, one from this morning. Both intact despite everything. Emma noticed and smiled through her tears. "The thread worked," she said. "Double protection." It did. "Will the sad lady be okay now?" Marcus looked at Catherine Kim being helped into an ambulance, still clutching the butterfly Emma had given her the night before. She caught his eye and nodded a promise that she'd see this through, that their sacrifice wouldn't be wasted. "She'll be okay," Marcus said. "We all will." But even as he said it, he knew things had changed. The maintenance man who just wanted to fix things quietly was gone. In his place stood someone else, still a father, still a protector, but no longer content to work in the shadows. The video of Emma attacking Morrison was already spreading. Butterfly Girl Saves Father would trend for weeks. The image of her small form taking on an armed killer would become iconic, a symbol of courage that transcended size or age. But that was still to come. For now, Marcus held his daughter and walked through the crowd of reporters, ignoring their questions. Master Liu fell into step beside them, a silent guardian. Tommy and Diana flanked them, creating a protective corridor. "Mr. Chen," a reporter shouted, "how does it feel to be a hero?" Marcus stopped, turned, looked directly into the nearest camera. "I'm not a hero," he said. "I'm just a father who fixes things. Today we fix something important. Tomorrow there'll be something else to fix. That's how the world works. Things break, and someone has to care enough to repair them. But you risked your life. My wife died because nobody risked anything to save her. I couldn't live with being that person for someone else." He walked away, then carrying Emma toward the van where James waited with the engine running. The crowd parted, something in Marcus's bearing making them step aside. As they drove away, Emma drowsy from adrenaline crash and curled against his side, Marcus thought about Grace. She would have been proud, he thought. Not of the violence, but of the standing up, the speaking out, the refusing to let evil win through indifference. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. He expected another threat, but instead found a simple message: "Thank you for saving my wife. A grateful husband." Then another: "My mother lived in building number 4. Thank you for getting justice." And another: "You showed my kids that ordinary people can make a difference." They kept coming, dozens, then hundreds. People who'd lost family in the fires, people who'd been intimidated into silence, people who'd given up hope that anyone would ever be held accountable. The courthouse steps were packed when Catherine Kim arrived to testify 6 weeks later. Marcus stood in the crowd, Emma's hand in his, watching the woman who'd almost died for the truth walk past the cameras with her head high. The red thread was still on her wrist, faded but unbroken, a reminder of the night that changed everything. "There she is," Emma pointed excitedly. "She's wearing the butterfly pin." She was right. Catherine had turned Emma's origami butterfly into a small bronze pin that caught the morning light on her lapel. It had become her trademark during the pre-trial hearings, a symbol that the media had latched onto. The butterfly whistleblower, they called her, though Marcus knew she hated the nickname. The crowd surged as Catherine climbed the steps, reporters shouting questions, supporters holding signs with painted butterflies and red threads. Someone had started selling red thread bracelets online, donating the proceeds to families affected by the Titan Properties fires. They'd raised over $3 million in just 6 weeks. "Mr. Chen," Marcus turned to find Agent Volkov approaching through the crowd. She looked tired but satisfied, the expression of someone seeing the end of a long fight. "Agent Volkov, it's just Sarah now. I'm on leave." She showed him her bare wrist where her service weapon usually sat, pending investigation for exceeding authorized parameters during the warehouse rescue. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. Best thing I ever did. Besides, James Okonkwo is representing me pro bono. Says the Bureau can't punish me for saving lives just because I didn't fill out the right paperwork first." Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Daddy Master Liu is waving at us." The old man stood near the courthouse entrance with Tommy, Diana, and James. They'd all been subpoenaed as witnesses, their role in the warehouse rescue part of the official record now, but they wore their summons like badges of honor. "The gang's all here," Diana said as they approached. Her purple hair had grown out, showing dark roots, but she'd kept the color. Said it reminded her that sometimes the world needed a little chaos to see clearly. "How's the security business?" Marcus asked Tommy, who'd quit nursing to start a company providing protection for whistleblowers and journalists. "Booming, unfortunately. Turns out there are a lot of Catherine Kims out there, people sitting on evidence of corporate crimes but too scared to come forward. We've helped 12 in the last month alone." "And they all want to meet the famous Marcus Chen," James added, adjusting his tie. "You've become something of a legend in certain circles." "I just fix things," Marcus said automatically, the response he'd given to every interview request, every offer to write a book, every Hollywood producer who wanted to turn his story into a movie. "Daddy still says that," Emma announced to the group. "But he's lying. He doesn't fix things anymore. He teaches people to fight." It was true. After the warehouse incident, Marcus had gone back to teaching. Not the corporate seminars he'd done before Grace's death, but something different. Free classes at the Crimson Phoenix for people who'd been victimized by the system, domestic abuse survivors, elderly residents of dangerous neighborhoods, minimum wage workers who traveled home late at night. His students called it the butterfly defense, though Marcus refused to use the name. It was practical, efficient, and designed for people who couldn't afford to lose a fight. Use whatever was at hand, create witnesses, document everything, survive first, seek justice second. The courthouse is opening, Lou observed. We should go in. They filed through security, Marcus noticing how the guards recognized them, nodding with what looked like respect. In the gallery, he saw familiar faces. Families of fire victims, journalists who'd been following the case, other whistleblowers who'd found courage in Catherine's example. And in the back row, trying to be inconspicuous, sat 3 men in expensive suits, not lawyers. Marcus recognized lawyers. These were corporate security, probably from one of Titan's competitor companies, here to see how the trial played out, what precedents might be set. They were already planning how to avoid the same fate. All rise for the Honorable Judge Patricia Weinstein. The judge entered a small woman whose reputation for intolerance of corporate malfeasance had made her the prosecution's first choice for the case. She denied every motion to dismiss, every attempt to suppress evidence, every delay tactic Titan's legal team had attempted. "Be seated," she said, then looked directly at the defense table where Frank Morrison sat in an orange jumpsuit, his lawyer beside him. Morrison had lost weight in custody, his bulk diminishing along with his bravado, but his eyes still held that predator's assessment when he looked at Marcus across the courtroom. "The prosecution may call its next witness." "The state calls Catherine Kim." Catherine rose from the prosecution table, smoothing her skirt, touching the butterfly pin for luck. She walked to the witness stand with measured steps, the click of her heels echoing in the silent courtroom. "Please state your name for the record." "Catherine Min-jung Kim." "Ms. Kim, you were employed as a forensic accountant by the firm of Brennan and Associates." "I was." "And in that capacity you were asked to audit the books of Titan Properties." "Yes, it was supposed to be routine due diligence for a potential merger." The prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Monica Rodriguez, moved smoothly through the preliminaries before getting to the heart of the matter. "What did you discover during your audit?" Catherine's voice was steady, clinical. "I found a pattern of payments that didn't match any legitimate business expense. They were coded as maintenance and improvements, but the amounts and recipients were suspicious." "How so?" "The payments went to individuals, not companies. Always in amounts just under $10,000 to avoid federal reporting requirements, and they corresponded with dates when building inspections were performed." "What conclusion did you draw from this?" "That Titan Properties was bribing city inspectors to overlook safety violations." A murmur ran through the gallery. Judge Weinstein gavelled for silence. "But that wasn't all you found, was it?" Rodriguez continued. "No." Catherine's voice dropped. "I found internal communications discussing what they called renovation acceleration." "Can you explain that term for the jury?" Catherine looked directly at Morrison as she answered. "It was their code for arson. They would identify buildings that were more valuable as empty lots for development, ensure they had good insurance coverage, then arrange for accidental fires." "How many buildings?" 8 that I could document. There may have been more." "And did these communications show any concern for the tenants in these buildings?" Catherine's composure finally cracked slightly. "They called them acceptable losses. There's an email from Morrison to the CEO saying, and I quote, 'The type of tenants in these buildings don't have families who can afford lawyers, even if someone suspects they can't prove anything.'" The gallery erupted. Judge Weinstein had to gavel repeatedly to restore order. Marcus felt Emma's hand tighten in his. She was old enough to understand what was being said, young enough to still be shocked by such casual evil. "Were you able to determine if these fires actually occurred?" "Yes. All 8 buildings burned within 6 months of the communications I found. 43 people died." Rodriguez walked Catherine through each building, each fire, each death. It took 3 hours. By the end, several jury members were crying. One elderly man who looked like he might have lived in one of those buildings himself was gripping his cane so tightly his knuckles were white. "Ms. Kim, why did you copy these files without authorization?" "Because I recognized the pattern. My colleague Ahmad Patel had noticed it first. He came to me because... She paused, gathering herself. Because his uncle had died in one of the fires, building number 6. Ahmad recognized the address in the files. What happened to Ahmad Patel? He was murdered the night after the Golden Pearl restaurant incident. They made it look like suicide, but Ahmad was Muslim, devout. He would never have taken his own life. The defense attorney, a sharp-faced man named Kellerman, objected. Speculation and prejudice, Your Honor. Sustained as to the speculation about suicide, Judge Weinstein ruled. The jury will disregard. Ms. Kim, please stick to what you know for certain. Catherine nodded. Ahmad is dead. The files he helped me copy are the only reason we know what Titan did. Let's talk about the night at the Golden Pearl, Rodriguez said. Can you tell us what happened? Catherine's hand went to her wrist, touching the spot where the red thread rested. I was contacted by 3 men who said they represented Titan Properties. They wanted to meet in a public place to discuss the misunderstanding about the files. I thought I'd be safe in a restaurant full of people. Were you... No. They positioned themselves to block my escape. They threatened me. They made it clear that if I didn't return the files and sign a statement saying I'd made everything up, I would face consequences. What happened then? Catherine looked at Marcus for the first time since taking the stand. A maintenance worker named Marcus Chen intervened. He saw I was in distress and came to help, even though he didn't know me, even though it put him in danger. Can you identify Marcus Chen? He's there in the gallery, 3rd row, with his daughter. Every head in the courtroom turned. Emma, never one to miss a moment, waved. Despite the seriousness of the situation, a ripple of affectionate laughter went through the room. What happened after Mr. Chen intervened? He documented everything, recorded it, made sure there were witnesses. He prevented them from taking me by force, and when the police arrived, there was enough evidence to arrest them. But that wasn't the end, was it? No. The next morning, I was kidnapped from my apartment. They took me to a warehouse at Pier 47. They were going to burn me alive, make it look like I'd set the fire myself in a suicide attempt, the same way they'd burned their buildings. How do you know this? Frank Morrison told me. He said I would burn like all the others, that nobody would question another tragic fire. But you were rescued. Yes, Mr. Chen came along with others. They saved my life. Rodriguez turned to the jury. No further questions at this time. Kellerman rose for cross-examination, his expression suggesting he knew he was fighting a losing battle, but was being paid too much to give up. Ms. Kim, you accessed confidential files without authorization, correct? Yes. You copied proprietary information belonging to Titan Properties. I copied evidence of murder. Moved to strike as non-responsive. Overruled, Judge Weinstein said. The witness is explaining her actions. Kellerman tried another angle. You've received significant media attention from this case, haven't you? Book deals, movie rights, speaking engagements. I've been offered those things. I've declined them all. Really, no financial benefit whatsoever. Catherine's voice hardened. Mr. Kellerman, 43 people died. One of them was my colleague's uncle. Another was Mr. Chen's wife. There is no amount of money that would make profiting from their deaths acceptable to me. But you have become famous. I've become visible. There's a difference. I can't go to a grocery store without being recognized. I've received death threats. I've had to move 3 times. If this is fame, I don't want it. Kellerman spent another hour trying to find holes in Catherine's testimony, but she was unshakable. The documents spoke for themselves, and she was simply their translator. When court recessed for lunch, Marcus found himself in the hallway with Catherine for the first time since the warehouse. Thank you, she said simply, for everything. You're the one testifying. You're the brave one. She held up her wrist, showing the red thread. I haven't taken it off. It reminds me that connections between people are the only real protection we have. Emma, who'd been quietly drawing during the testimony, showed Catherine her latest creation, a picture of butterflies carrying buildings away from fires. So the people can escape, Emma explained. The butterflies save everyone. Catherine knelt down to Emma's level. That's beautiful. You know what, you're right. The butterflies do save everyone. Every time someone speaks up, every time someone helps a stranger, every time someone refuses to look away, Those are all butterflies. Is my daddy a butterfly? Catherine smiled. The biggest, strongest butterfly I've ever seen. Marcus was about to deflect when his phone buzzed. Unknown number, but he'd learned to answer those now. Mr. Chen. This is Rebecca Santos from the Times. I'm at New York Presbyterian Hospital. There's a situation here you need to know about. A woman named Linda Park is refusing to leave her husband's room. Security is about to forcibly remove her, but she says she knows. Says you'd understand why she can't leave. Marcus recognized the name. Linda Park was one of his students, a 60-year-old Korean woman who'd started taking his classes after her husband was diagnosed with dementia. She'd been terrified of the day when she might have to physically defend him from those who might take advantage of his confusion. What's the situation? The hospital says her insurance has lapsed, that her husband needs to be transferred to a state facility. But Mrs. Park says those facilities are where patients go to die. She's barricaded herself in the room. Marcus looked at Catherine and Emma at the courtroom where justice was finally being served for crimes long buried. Tell her I'm coming, he said. Catherine heard his side of the conversation. Go, she said. This trial will continue for weeks. That woman needs you now. Daddy, are we helping someone? Emma asked. Yeah, baby, we are. They arrived at the hospital to find a crowd already forming. Somehow word had gotten out that the butterfly defense man was coming. The security guards looked uncomfortable, clearly not wanting to be filmed dragging an elderly woman from her dying husband's bedside. Linda Park sat in a chair she'd wedged against the door, her small frame tense with determination. Through the window, Marcus could see her husband in the bed connected to machines, unaware of the drama around him. Mrs. Park, wow, Marcus called through the door. It's Marcus Chen. The door opened immediately. Linda Park's face was streaked with tears, but her eyes were fierce. Mr. Chen, they want to take him to one of those places. The same company that owns the facility, it's subsidiary of Titan Properties. They buy sick people's debt, force them into their facilities, then bill Medicare until the patients die. It's another scam, another way they profit from suffering. Marcus felt the familiar anger rising. Even facing prosecution, even with their executives in jail, the tentacles of corruption spread wide. Do you have proof? I have everything. She showed him a folder thick with documents. My nephew is a paralegal. He's been investigating. 17 elderly patients transferred to Titan-owned facilities in the last year. All died within 6 months. All had their estates drained by medical bills first. Marcus looked at the growing crowd at the cameras already recording. Then he looked at Emma, who was tying one of her red threads around Mrs. Park's wrist. For protection, Emma said solemnly. He made a decision. Mrs. Park, would you like to tell your story to those reporters? I'm not good with cameras. You don't have to be good, you just have to be truthful. For the next hour, Linda Park became the unlikely face of another scandal. She spoke about her husband, a war veteran who'd served his country only to be abandoned by it in his illness. She showed the documents, the bills, the threats from collection agencies owned by the same company that owned the facilities. The hospital administration, faced with the growing crowd and negative publicity, suddenly discovered that Mrs. Park's insurance was actually valid after all, a clerical error, they said. Her husband could stay, but the damage was done. Butterfly Defense started trending again this time, attached to stories of elderly patients, disabled individuals, everyone who'd been victimized by the healthcare to hospice pipeline that companies like Titan had created. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment watching the news coverage. The trial, the hospital confrontation, the growing movement of people refusing to be silent victims anymore, it was becoming something larger than he'd ever intended. Emma was asleep on the couch, exhausted from the day. She'd given out 14 red threads at the hospital, each one to someone who'd shared their own story of loss and exploitation. His phone rang. Master Liu. Sifu. Have you seen the news from Chicago? No. Turn on Channel 7. Marcus changed the channel to find coverage of a massive protest outside a Titan-owned building in Chicago. Hundreds of people, all wearing red threads around their wrists, all holding paper butterflies. It's spreading, Liu said. Your students here, they're teaching others. The butterfly defense isn't just about physical protection anymore. It's about standing up, speaking out, refusing to be silent. I never meant the best movements are never meant Marcus. They simply become necessary. After Liu hung up, Marcus stood on his small balcony, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Catherine Kim was preparing for another day of testimony. Somewhere, Linda Park was sitting beside her husband's bed, safe for now, from those who would exploit them. Somewhere, families who'd lost loved ones to corporate greed were finding their voices. The red threads on his wrist, he wore 3, now one from yesterday when Emma had insisted caught the light from the street below. Grace would have loved this, he thought. Not the violence, not the danger, but the community. The way strangers had become family through shared purpose. The way Emma had learned that helping others wasn't just right, it was necessary. His phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. Tomorrow I testify about Grace's building. I wanted you to know. Marcus stared at the message for a long time. Tomorrow the world would hear how his wife died. How she'd tried to save others, pulling 3 elderly neighbors from their apartments before the smoke overwhelmed her. How the exits had been chained. How the sprinklers had been disabled. How she'd died a hero in a murder disguised as negligence. He typed back, "Thank you for being her voice." Catherine's response was immediate. "We're all her voice now." Marcus went inside, covered Emma with a blanket, and sat in the darkness thinking about butterflies and red threads, about broken things that could still be useful, about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, because the alternative was unthinkable. Tomorrow would bring more testimony, more revelations, more chances for justice, or its failure. But tonight his daughter was safe. The bad men were in jail, and somewhere in the city people were tying red threads around their wrists and refusing to be victims anymore. It wasn't the life he'd planned, wasn't the quiet existence of fixing broken equipment he'd retreated into after Grace's death. But maybe, just maybe, it was the life he was meant to live. The cracked porcelain spoon sat on his kitchen counter, its fracture catching the moonlight through the window. Still broken, still useful, still ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. Marcus picked it up, feeling its familiar weight, and made a decision. Tomorrow, after Catherine's testimony, he would do something he'd been avoiding for 4 years. He would visit Grace's grave, and he would tell her that her death had not been in vain, that from the ashes of their loss had risen something beautiful and fierce and unstoppable. A movement of butterflies carrying people to safety on wings made of truth and courage and red thread. The next morning came too soon and not soon enough. Marcus woke Emma early, dressed her in her best outfit, the one she'd worn to Grace's funeral, now almost too small, and they headed to the courthouse through streets already filling with protesters and supporters. The crowd outside had tripled from yesterday. Red threads were everywhere, tied around wrists, wound through hair strung between protest signs. Someone was handing out origami butterflies made from newspaper articles about the trial. "Daddy, we're famous," Emma said, not entirely pleased about it. "No, baby. The idea is famous. We're just the people who started it." Inside the courthouse, Catherine was already on the stand. She looked tired, but determined, the butterfly pin prominent on her jacket. "Ms. Kim," Rodriguez began, "yesterday you testified about 8 buildings. Today I want to focus on one specific building, the Jade Garden Apartments in Chinatown." Marcus's chest tightened. Emma's hand found his. "What can you tell us about that fire?" Catherine's voice was steady, clinical, but her eyes found Marcus in the gallery. The Jade Garden Apartments were built in 1947. By 2010, they were in severe disrepair. Titan Properties bought the building in 2019 with the stated intention of renovation. Instead, they systematically made it more dangerous. How so? They disabled sprinkler systems, claiming they were upgrading them. They chained emergency exits supposedly to prevent break-ins. They ignored electrical problems that multiple tenants had reported. And then on March 15, 2021, they had Frank Morrison's team set a fire in the basement electrical room. Objection. Kellerman stood. That's accusation of specific criminal action without... "I have the email," Catherine said quietly. Morrison to the CEO, dated March 14, 2021. Subject line, "Garden project tomorrow night." Body of the email, "Electrical failure scenario confirmed. Team in place. Insurance adjuster prepped. Acceptable casualty estimate 5 to 10. The courtroom went absolutely silent. They estimated casualties, Rodriguez asked. They did, like they were calculating inventory loss. How many people actually died? 12, including Grace Chen, who died trying to evacuate elderly residents from the fourth floor. Marcus closed his eyes, but he could still see it. The security footage he'd watched 100 times showing Grace running back into the building. She'd gotten Mrs. Liu out Mr. Kwan, the Pham family. She'd gone back for Mrs. Rodriguez, who was in a wheelchair. The smoke had been too thick. They'd found them together in the stairwell, Grace's body shielding the older woman trying to protect her to the very end. Mr. Morrison, Catherine continued, personally inspected the building the day before the fire. There's a photo of him removing the batteries from smoke detectors. The prosecution displayed the photo on the courtroom screens. Morrison clearly identifiable, standing on a ladder smoke detector in hand. No further questions, Rodriguez said. Kellerman's cross-examination was perfunctory. There was no defending the indefensible. Even Morrison's co-defendants' lawyers were distancing themselves, filing motions to sever their cases from his. When court recessed, Marcus found himself standing outside Emma's hand in his, struggling to breathe. The crowd parted around them, recognizing his distress, giving him space. Mr. Chen. He turned to find a young woman, maybe 25, with press credentials but kind eyes. I'm not doing interviews, he said automatically. No, I lived in the Jade Garden building, 3rd floor. Your wife saved my grandmother, got her out when the smoke was already thick. I was at work, I couldn't. Grace saved her, gave us 3 more years together before Grandma passed naturally. I just wanted you to know that your wife was a hero, a real hero. She pressed something into his hand and disappeared into the crowd. It was a photo Grace at some building event, laughing, surrounded by elderly residents who clearly adored her. He'd never seen it before. She was beautiful, Daddy, Emma said, looking at the photo. Inside and out, baby. They walked to the cemetery as the afternoon sun cast long shadows between the headstones. Marcus hadn't been here since the funeral, couldn't bear it. But now, with Emma beside him, and the city finally knowing the truth, it felt like time. Grace's headstone was simple. Grace Lin Chen, beloved wife and mother who died saving others. Someone had left fresh flowers. As they got closer, Marcus saw red threads tied around the stems and a small paper butterfly tucked among the blooms. Hi, Mommy, Emma said, as naturally as if Grace could hear her. Daddy's been helping people like you did, and I'm helping too. I make butterflies and give people protection threads. We're making the bad men pay for what they did. Marcus knelt beside the stone, his hand touching the cold granite. Grace, he said quietly, they knew. They knew people would die, and they did it anyway. But we got them. Catherine got them. The truth is out now. The wind picked up, rustling the trees, and for just a moment Marcus could swear he smelled Grace's perfumed jasmine and something uniquely her. I'm teaching again, he continued. Not the corporate stuff, but real teaching. People who need to protect themselves, who need to know they're not powerless. Emma helps. She's just like you, Grace. Sees the world as it should be and insists on making it that way. Emma had wandered a few feet away, picking dandelions with the focused intensity she brought to everything. Marcus watched her for a moment, this little girl who'd inherited her mother's courage and her father's determination. I couldn't save you, he whispered to the stone. But maybe we can save others. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's what you'd want. His phone buzzed. Sarah Volkov. Marcus, you need to know, Morrison made bail. The words hit like ice water. What? How? Family money. Old connections. A judge who owed favors. He's out and his ankle monitor malfunctioned an hour ago. We have no idea where he is. Marcus looked at Emma, still picking flowers, unaware that the monster who'd killed her mother was free. Find him, Marcus said. We're trying, but Marcus, be careful. Morrison blames you for everything. You're the one who exposed him, who stopped him from killing Catherine. If he's going to go after anyone, he's coming for me. Or Emma. Keep her close. Marcus ended the call, his mind already shifting into threat assessment mode. The cemetery was too open, too many places for a sniper to position. The walk home had too many blind corners. Their apartment had too many windows. "Emma," he called, keeping his voice calm. "Time to go, sweetheart." "But I'm not done picking flowers for Mommy." "We'll come back tomorrow. Right now we need to visit Master Liu." She read something in his face the way children do when they sense adult fear. "Is something wrong?" "Maybe. Remember our emergency plan." They'd practiced it after the warehouse incident. What to do if bad men came, where to go, who to call. Emma nodded solemnly, her flower-picking forgotten. They moved quickly, but not frantically, Marcus keeping Emma on his left side away from the street, his right hand free. The cracked porcelain spoon was in his pocket, a familiar weight. They made it 3 blocks before Marcus saw him. Morrison stood at the end of the street, no longer in prison orange, but in a dark suit that didn't quite hide the bulge of a weapon. He wasn't trying to hide, wasn't attempting surprise. He wanted Marcus to see him coming. "Emma," Marcus said quietly, "remember what we practiced. Run to the nearest store, call 911. Don't come back no matter what." "Good girl, on 3. 1, 2. But Emma didn't run. Instead, she stepped forward, placing herself between Morrison and her father. "You killed my mommy," she said, her voice carrying down the empty street. "You burned our home and killed my mommy and all those other people." Morrison stopped, perhaps not expecting to face a child's accusation. "Emma, run," Marcus said. "No." She pulled red threads from her pocket, holding them up like weapons. "These are protection, and you can't hurt us anymore because everyone knows who you are. Everyone knows what you did." She was right. People were emerging from buildings, phones out recording. Morrison was being live-streamed from a dozen angles. "You took my mommy." Emma continued, tears streaming down her face, but her voice steady. "But you didn't take what she taught us. That helping people is more important than being safe. That standing up is more important than standing down." She threw the red threads at Morrison's feet. "These are for you, because you need protection too. Protection from what you've become." Morrison looked at the threads at the child who'd just offered him mercy he didn't deserve at the crowd growing around them. His hand moved toward his weapon. Marcus moved without thinking, the spoon in his hand, before he consciously drew it. But he didn't need it. The crowd surged forward, not as a mob, but as a shield, placing themselves between Morrison and the Chens. Store owners, delivery drivers, elderly women with shopping bags, ordinary people doing an extraordinary thing. "You want to shoot someone," an old man called out. "Shoot me. I'm 83. I survived Korea, Vietnam, and 50 years of marriage. You don't scare me." "Or me," a young woman added, stepping forward. "I work 3 jobs to pay rent in this city. What's one more danger?" More voices joined in, more bodies creating a human wall. Morrison stood there, his revenge fantasy crumbling in the face of collective courage. Sirens wailed in the distance. Morrison looked at the crowd, at Marcus, at Emma still standing defiantly with tears on her cheeks. Then he turned and ran. The police caught him 6 blocks away, tackled him in front of 100 witnesses as he tried to carjack an Uber driver. This time, no judge would grant bail. This time, he'd threatened a child on live stream. But Marcus wasn't thinking about Morrison anymore. He was kneeling beside Emma, who'd finally let her brave facade crack and was sobbing into his shoulder. "You were so brave, baby. Too brave. You should have run." "Mommy wouldn't have run." "No," Marcus admitted. "She wouldn't have." The crowd was dispersing, but not before many of them stopped to check on Emma, to offer comfort, to tie red threads around their own wrists in solidarity. The city had seen a child stand up to her mother's killer, and something had shifted. That night, the video of Emma facing down Morrison went beyond viral. It became iconic. News channels played it on loop. Social media exploded with art of a small girl throwing threads at a giant's feet. Someone set it to music, a haunting violin piece that made even hardened cynics cry. But in their apartment, Marcus just held his daughter as she slept, exhausted from being braver than any child should have to be. The red threads on his wrist 4 now caught the light from the window. His phone vibrated with a text from Catherine. "Closing arguments tomorrow. The jury won't need long. We won Marcus. Grace won." He typed back, "Emma won." She faced him down with nothing but threads and truth. The threads were enough. They always were. Marcus looked at the cracked spoon on his coffee table, at the threads on his wrist, at his daughter curled against his side. Broken things and fragile things, but useful when it mattered. Tomorrow Morrison would be sentenced. Tomorrow, Titan Properties would finally fall. Tomorrow, 43 families would have something like justice. But tonight a father held his daughter and whispered stories about her mother, about butterflies that carried people to safety, about red threads that connected all of us, about how sometimes the smallest acts of courage could topple giants. Outside the city hummed with its usual chaos. But something had changed. In apartments and offices and schools and shelters, people were tying red threads around their wrists. They were folding paper butterflies. They were looking at corruption and saying, "Wrong table, wrong day." The butterfly defense had become something Marcus never intended, not just a way to protect yourself, but a way to protect each other. A reminder that we're all connected by invisible threads, and when one of us stands up, we all rise. The verdict came down like thunder on a clear day, guilty on all charges. Marcus watched from the gallery as Frank Morrison's legs buckled, his attorney's hand on his elbow, the only thing keeping him upright. 43 counts of murder in the second degree. Hundreds of counts of conspiracy, arson, bribery, and racketeering. The judge's voice was steady as she read each verdict, each guilty. Another nail in the coffin of Titan Properties' empire. Emma sat beside him, drawing in her notebook, butterflies carrying buildings away from fires, red threads connecting stick figures holding hands. She'd insisted on being there for the verdict, said she needed to see the bad man face consequences. Marcus had reluctantly agreed, knowing she'd already seen too much to be protected from this ending. Catherine Kim sat at the prosecution table, her shoulders finally relaxing after months of tension. The butterfly pin caught the light as she turned to look at the gallery, finding Marcus's eyes. She nodded once, a silent acknowledgement of what they'd accomplished together. But even as the courtroom erupted in subdued celebration, victims' families embracing journalists, frantically typing lawyers, shaking hands, Marcus noticed something wrong. A man in a maintenance uniform near the jury exit. His face unfamiliar, his movements too purposeful. Another janitor by the judge's chambers holding a mop, but not cleaning anything. His phone buzzed. Sarah Volkov, get out now. Intel says Morrison's people planned something for the verdict. Courthouse might be compromised. Marcus stood smoothly, taking Emma's hand. We need to go, sweetheart. But they're not done yet. Now, Emma. His tone brooked no argument. Emma gathered her things, confused but obedient. They moved toward the main exit, Marcus's eyes scanning, cataloging threats. 3 more fake maintenance workers. A lawyer, whose suit didn't fit right, whose briefcase was held at the wrong angle for its apparent weight. They were 10 feet from the door when the fire alarm went off. Not just went off, screamed a piercing wail that sent everyone into motion. But this wasn't a drill, wasn't a malfunction. Marcus could smell it, already smoke, chemical-laden and wrong, pouring from the ventilation system. Everyone remain calm, a court officer shouted, but panic was already spreading. The crowd pushed toward the exits, bodies pressing together, the exact kind of chaos that turned evacuation into tragedy. Marcus lifted Emma into his arms, her weight nothing compared to the adrenaline flooding his system. He looked back to see Catherine being hustled out by prosecutors. Master Liu helping an elderly couple navigate the crowd. Diana pulling people away from a door that was somehow locked during a fire alarm, just like Grace's building. The windows! Marcus shouted over the alarm. Check the windows! Tommy was already there, using a chair to smash the glass. Fresh air rushed in, but it also fed the smoke, making it billow thicker. This wasn't random arson. This was engineered, designed to create maximum chaos and casualties. A figure emerged from the smoke, Morrison. He shouldn't have been there, should have been in custody, but somehow he was free and moving through the chaos with purpose. His eyes locked on Marcus, and in them was nothing but hate. You took everything from me, Morrison snarled, his voice barely audible over the alarm. You took everything from yourself, Marcus replied, setting Emma down behind him. Emma run to Master Liu. But Emma didn't run. She stood beside her father, chin raised, trembling but defiant. We're not afraid of you anymore. Morrison laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You should be. He pulled something from his pocket. Not a gun, but a small device with a single red button. A detonator. Insurance, he said. I always have insurance. There are devices throughout this building. If I can't have my freedom, I'll have my revenge. 43 people died in my buildings. Let's see how many die in yours. The smoke was getting thicker. People were coughing, stumbling, the evacuation turning into a stampede. But Marcus stood still, his mind racing through options. The cracked porcelain spoon was in his pocket, useless against a dead man switch. If Morrison died or released the button, the building would blow. You do this, you kill everyone, Marcus said, including yourself. I'm already dead. You killed me the moment you uploaded that video, but I'll take you with me, you, your brat, and everyone who celebrated my downfall. Emma stepped forward, and Marcus grabbed her shoulder to pull her back. But she shrugged him off with surprising strength. My mommy died saving people, she said to Morrison. She ran into fire to help strangers. That's what made her a hero. You're about to die killing people. That's what makes you a monster, and monsters always lose. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a paper butterfly, one made from newspaper coverage of the trial. She held it out to Morrison like an offering. This is for you, because even monsters were children once. Even monsters had mothers who loved them. Morrison stared at the butterfly, and for just a moment something human flickered in his eyes. Memory, perhaps. Regret. Or maybe just confusion that a child would offer mercy to someone threatening her life. That moment of distraction was all Master Liu needed. The old man moved through the smoke like a ghost, 73 years old, but still water, still wind. His hand found Morrison's wrist, not striking but guiding, redirecting the man's own momentum. The detonator flew from Morrison's grip, skittering across the floor. Marcus dove for it, catching it before it could hit the ground and potentially trigger from impact. His thumb found the button, holding it down, maintaining whatever circuit Morrison had been completing. Everyone out! He shouted. Now! The evacuation turned organized, Liu and Tommy directing traffic. Diana breaking open more windows, James literally carrying an elderly juror who'd been overcome by smoke. Catherine Kim was by the prosecution table, refusing to leave without the evidence boxes, the physical proof of Titan's crimes. Leave them! Sarah Volkov shouted, appearing through the smoke with a team of FBI agents. These are the originals, Catherine shouted back. Without them, you're dead. Marcus called out, still holding the detonator. Go, I've got this. It was a lie. He had no idea how to defuse whatever Morrison had rigged, but he knew the building had to be cleared before he could even try. Morrison was on the ground, Liu's knee in his back, the old man barely breathing hard while Morrison gasped and cursed. The smoke was clearing now that the windows were broken, revealing the full scope of the chaos. Overturned furniture, scattered papers, the abandoned possessions of people who'd fled for their lives. Daddy. Emma hadn't left. Of course she hadn't left. Emma, you need to go. Not without you. This button, if I let go, the building might explode. I need you safe. Emma looked at the detonator, at her father, at Morrison still pinned on the floor. Then she did something that would be talked about for years. She sat down cross-legged beside Marcus and started folding a paper crane from a court document that had fallen nearby. I'll wait, she said simply. We face things together. That's what family does. The bomb squad arrived 7 minutes later, though it felt like 7 hours. Marcus's thumb had started to cramp, sweat running down his face, despite the cold air from the broken windows. Emma had made 3 paper cranes, lining them up like sentinels. Sir, we need you to maintain pressure while we trace the circuit, the bomb tech said, her voice calm despite the situation. Can you do that? I've been doing it. Good. This is going to take a few minutes. Everyone else needs to clear the building. My daughter, stays, Emma interrupted. We're connected. She held up her wrist, showing the red thread tied there. If you make me leave, the thread breaks. That's bad luck. The bomb tech looked like she wanted to argue, but something in Emma's face, that same determination that had faced down Morrison, made her nod. Keep her talking, she told Marcus. Both of you stay calm. So Marcus talked. He told Emma about meeting her mother, about their first date at a terrible Chinese restaurant where the food was awful, but the conversation was perfect. He told her about Grace's laugh, her terrible singing, her absolute inability to fold fitted sheets. Emma told him about school, about her friend Lily, who could speak 4 languages, about the butterfly garden she wanted to plant on their building's roof. She told him about the dreams where Mommy visited, always surrounded by butterflies, always smiling, They talked while the bomb tech worked, while Morrison was dragged away in chains, while the building was confirmed clear of other devices. They talked until the tech said the magic words, "Got it, you can let go." Marcus's thumb released the button. Nothing exploded. The building stood. Emma threw herself into his arms, and he held her tight, both of them shaking now that the danger had passed. Around them, emergency responders were checking the building, documenting the attempted attack, preserving the evidence that Catherine had risked her life to save. Mr. Chen, a reporter had somehow gotten past the police line camera crew in tow. How does it feel to have saved the courthouse? Marcus stood Emma still in his arms and looked directly into the camera. I didn't save anything alone. Master Liu stopped Morrison. The bomb squad defused the device. Everyone who helped evacuate people safely, they're the heroes. I just held a button. But your daughter stayed with you, risking her life. My daughter showed more courage than most adults ever will. She faced down the man who killed her mother and offered him mercy. She stayed because that's what love does. It stays when leaving would be safer. He walked away, then carrying Emma through the crowd that had gathered outside. People reached out to touch them as they passed, like they were talismans of hope. Someone started clapping, then others joined in until the sound followed them down the courthouse steps. Sarah Volkov caught up with them at Marcus's van. That was incredibly stupid and incredibly brave. Which part? All of it. Emma facing Morrison. You holding that detonator, staying in the building. She paused. Thank you. For what? For proving that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. For showing that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. She handed him a card. My personal number. The Bureau is forming a new task force to investigate corruption in city services, inspection departments, housing authorities, anyone who might be taking bribes to overlook safety violations. We could use a consultant who understands both the technical side and the human cost. Marcus looked at the card, then at Emma, who was already folding it into something that might become a butterfly. I'll think about it. That night, the attempted courthouse bombing led every newscast. The image of Emma sitting beside her father, calmly folding paper cranes while he held a dead man's switch, became instantly iconic. Someone had filmed it through the broken courthouse window, the smoke swirling around them like something out of a movie. But more importantly, Morrison's attempt to destroy the evidence had failed. Every document, every email, every piece of proof survived. The trial would continue. Justice would be served. Marcus tucked Emma into bed, her room now decorated with hundreds of paper butterflies sent by strangers inspired by her courage. She'd insisted on keeping them all, said they were proof that good outnumbered evil. Daddy, she said sleepily, were you scared today? Terrified. But you didn't let go. Neither did you. You stayed with me. That's what Mommy would have done. Marcus kissed her forehead. Yeah, baby, that's exactly what Mommy would have done. His phone buzzed with messages as he left her room. Catherine Kim. The evidence is secure. We can continue. Grace will have justice. Master Liu. Proud of you both. Real strength is not in the fist, but in the hand that stays open. Diana. You realize Emma's going to be impossible to babysit now, right? Kid faced down a terrorist and won. But it was the last message that stopped him cold. Unknown number, but the content was clear. Morrison was just one head of the Hydra. You've made powerful enemies, Mr. Chen. Watch your back. Marcus deleted the message, then reconsidered and screenshot it first, sending it to Sarah Volkov. If there were more Frank Morrisons out there, more Titan properties operating in shadow, then the fight wasn't over. He stood on his small balcony looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there in buildings just as vulnerable as Grace's had been, people were sleeping unaware of the dangers around them. Faulty wiring, disabled sprinklers, chained exits, all it took was greed and indifference to turn homes into death traps. The red threads on his wrist, 5 now. Emma had added another after the courthouse caught the light. Each one a reminder, a connection, a promise to keep fighting. His phone rang. Unknown number, but he answered. Mr. Chin. This is Timothy Walsh from the mayor's office. The mayor would like to meet with you tomorrow to discuss a new citywide safety initiative. After today's events, it's clear we need people like you involved in preventing future tragedies. People like me. People who see what's broken and aren't afraid to fix it. People who stand up when standing up is dangerous. The mayor wants to create a civilian oversight committee for building safety, one that can't be bought or intimidated. Will you at least hear her out? Marcus thought about Grace, about the 43 people who died for profit, about Emma facing down Morrison with nothing but paper butterflies and truth. What time? 10 a.m. City Hall. Mr. Chen, what you and your daughter did today, what you've been doing since this started, it's changing things. The butterfly effect is real. After he hung up, Marcus went to his closet and pulled out a box he hadn't opened in 4 years. Inside were Grace's things, her jewelry, her photos, the last painting she'd been working on before she died. It was unfinished, a bird taking flight wings spread, but details incomplete. He set it on his easel. He'd kept the easel, unable to part with it, and studied the lines Grace had sketched. She'd always said art was about seeing what could be, not just what was, about adding color and light to emptiness. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. Is that Mommy's? Yeah, her last painting. It's not done. No. Emma patted over, looking at the sketch with the serious expression she got when solving problems. We could finish it. We don't know what she intended. She intended it to fly, Emma said simply. All her birds flew. We just have to help this one get there. She picked up a brush too small for her fingers and looked at Marcus expectantly. You have to help. I don't know how to paint birds, but maybe together we can figure it out. Marcus picked up another brush, his hand trembling slightly. He'd never painted, had always left that to Grace. But Emma was right, together they could try. They worked in silence for a while, adding touches of color, trying to imagine what Grace would have done. The bird began to take shape, not perfect, not Grace's style exactly, but something new, something theirs. It looks like a butterfly bird, Emma observed. She was right. Their additions had transformed Grace's bird into something hybrid, wings that could have been feathers or could have been butterfly wings, depending on how the light hit them. I think Mommy would like it, Emma said. Why? Because it's both things at once. Strong, like a bird, pretty like a butterfly. Like how we're both maintenance people and heroes. Like how broken things can still be useful. Marcus set down his brush and hugged his daughter, this little philosopher who saw the world in metaphors and connections. You know what, I think you're right. Mommy would love it. They hung the painting in the living room that night, still wet, probably not properly finished. But it felt right, Grace's vision completed by the family she'd left behind, transformed into something new by their shared loss and love. The next morning brought new challenges. The meeting with the mayor, where Marcus would help design systems to prevent future tragedies. Emma's school, where she'd have to navigate being the courthouse bombing girl. The ongoing trial, where more truth would be revealed about how deep the corruption went. But for now, in the pre-dawn quiet, Marcus stood before the butterfly bird painting and felt something he hadn't experienced in 4 years' peace. Not the absence of conflict, but the presence of purpose. Grace was gone, but her spirit lived on in every person they helped, every truth they exposed, every red thread that connected strangers in solidarity. The butterfly defense had become more than just a fighting technique. It had become a philosophy. Face your fears, protect others, transform violence into justice. Connect through compassion. Emma joined him, already dressed for school, a new butterfly clip in her hair. Ready for another day of fixing things? She asked. Marcus looked at his daughter, at the painting, at the city waking up outside their window. Yeah, baby, let's go fix the world. They left together, hand in hand, red threads on their wrists, ready for whatever battles the day would bring. Behind them, the butterfly bird painting caught the morning sun wings spread wide, finally free to fly. The mayor's office was exactly what Marcus expected, all Polish in power, designed to impress and intimidate. But after facing down Frank Morrison with a dead man's switch, it would take more than mahogany and marble to make him nervous. Mayor Patricia Hernandez stood as they entered, her handshake firm, her smile genuine. Mr. Chen, thank you for coming, and this must be Emma. Emma, who'd insisted on coming, performed a small bow she'd learned in her martial arts class. Thank you for having us, Mayor Hernandez. Such wonderful manners. Please sit. Can I get you anything, coffee, juice? Do you have chocolate milk? Emma asked hopefully. The mayor's assistant scrambled to find some while Hernandez got down to business. Mr. Chen, what happened yesterday at the courthouse was a wake-up call. We've been reactive for too long, only addressing safety violations after tragedies occur. I want to change that. How? A civilian oversight committee with real teeth. The power to conduct surprise inspections, to override corrupt inspectors, to shut down dangerous buildings immediately. No bureaucracy, no delays, no opportunities for bribes to smooth things over. Marcus leaned back, studying her. And you want me involved? I want you to lead it. I'm not a politician? Exactly. You're someone who can't be bought, can't be intimidated, and has already proven you'll risk everything to protect people. The citizens trust you. More importantly, the corrupt fear you. I fix industrial equipment. You expose corruption and save lives. The equipment is just your cover story. She smiled. I've done my homework, Mr. Chen. Before your wife's death, you trained federal agents in threat assessment. You have 3 patents for safety detection systems. You speak 4 languages and have a master's degree in engineering that you never mention. Emma looked at her father with surprise. You speak 4 languages. 5 if you count Mama's bad cooking as a language, he said, making her giggle. The point is, Hernandez continued, you're uniquely qualified. Technical expertise, investigative skills, and most importantly, personal investment in making sure no one else loses what you lost. What about the people who won't want this committee to exist, the ones making money from the current system? That's why I need someone they're afraid of. After yesterday, after the videos of you holding that detonator while your daughter made origami beside you, you've become something more than just a man. You've become a symbol. Symbols make good targets. They also inspire others to stand up. She pulled out a folder thick with documents. These are reports from the last week alone. 17 different groups of tenants have formed committees, inspired by the Butterfly Defense conducting their own building inspections documenting violations. 3 slumlords have already been arrested based on evidence these groups collected. Marcus flipped through the papers, seeing photos of people with red threads around their wrists, holding smartphones and clipboards, doing exactly what he'd been doing alone for years. They're calling themselves Butterfly Watchers, Hernandez said. They need leadership training coordination. They need you. Before Marcus could respond, Emma spoke up. My daddy says one person can't fix everything, but maybe one person can teach other people to fix things, and then they teach more people, and eventually everything gets fixed. The mayor smiled. Your daughter is very wise. She gets it from her mother. Will you at least consider it? Take a week, think about what you could accomplish with official backing, with resources, with the law on your side for once. Marcus stood to leave, then turned back. If I do this, I have conditions. Name them. First, I work my own hours. My daughter comes first always. Second, I choose my own team. People I trust, not political appointees. Third, we operate transparently. Every inspection, every report, every decision goes public. No backroom deals, no hidden agendas. Done. I haven't agreed yet. But you will. Hernandez's confidence was unshakable. Because you can't walk away from the chance to prevent another Grace Chen from dying. She was right, and they both knew it. That afternoon, Marcus and Emma visited the ruins of the Jade Garden apartments. The building had been demolished after the fire, the lot sitting empty for 3 years while legal battles raged over the land. Now, with Titan properties destroyed, the city had reclaimed it. This is where Mommy lived, Emma asked, looking at the empty space. Where we all lived. You were too young to remember. We had a small apartment on the 3rd floor. Your mom painted in the corner by the window because the light was best there. They stood quietly for a moment. Then Emma pulled out a butterfly she'd folded from that morning's newspaper. The headline read, Courthouse Bomber Charged with Domestic Terrorism. She placed it on the ground where the building's entrance had been. For the people who didn't get out, she said solemnly. Others had left tributes too, flowers, photos, candles. 43 small memorials for 43 lives. Marcus read each name, remembering faces, voices, the small kindnesses that made a building full of strangers into a community. Mr. Chen. He turned to find an elderly Chinese woman, one he recognized but couldn't quite place. Mrs. Zhang from 4B. You remember? Her eyes filled with tears. I wanted to thank you for what you've done, for making them pay. My husband, he didn't make it out. But now I know it wasn't an accident. Now I know someone cared enough to find the truth. She tied a red thread around Marcus's wrist. He had 6 now, and another around Emma's. For protection, she said, and for connection. We're all connected by what happened here. What happens to one of us happens to all of us. More people arrived as word spread that Marcus was there. Survivors, families of victims, neighbors from surrounding buildings. They shared stories, memories, grief, and gradually hope. You're going to take the mayor's job, aren't you? Catherine Kim appeared beside him, having somehow heard about the morning's meeting. Probably. Good. The system needs people like you inside it, not just fighting from the outside. What about you? What's next? I'm starting a nonprofit, financial forensics for families who suspect their loved ones died from corporate negligence but can't afford investigations. I'm calling it the Grace Chen Foundation, if that's okay with you. Marcus's throat tightened. She would have loved that. As the sun set, someone had brought candles and the empty lot transformed into a constellation of small lights. Someone else had brought a speaker playing soft music. It wasn't a protest or a memorial service. It was something in between, a community refusing to let tragedy have the last word. Emma had made dozens of butterflies, teaching other children how to fold them. They attached them to a fence with red thread, creating an impromptu art installation that would be photographed and shared thousands of times by morning. Daddy, Emma said as they prepared to leave. I think Mommy's happy. Why? Because look. She gestured at the gathering. All these people are connected now. They're helping each other. That's what she always wanted for people to help each other. Master Liu appeared from the crowd, moving with his usual quiet grace. Marcus, there's someone you need to meet. He led them to a young man, maybe 25, nervous and trying to hide it. This is Alex Morrison, Liu said. Marcus tensed. Morrison. Frank Morrison's son, the young man said quickly. I know what you're thinking, but I'm not him. I've spent 5 years trying to distance myself from what he did. I'm a firefighter now. I save lives to atone for the ones he took. Marcus studied him, seeing genuine pain in his eyes. Why are you here? To apologize. To offer help. I know where my father kept his private files, the ones the FBI didn't find. Records of other companies doing what Titan did. Names, dates, buildings at risk. I want to give them to you. Why? Alex looked at Emma, who was watching him with that unnerving directness children possessed. Because she was right. At the courthouse, when she said even monsters were children once. My father was a monster, but he wasn't always. Something broke in him, or maybe it was always broken and just got worse. Either way, I can't undo what he did. But maybe I can help prevent others from doing the same. He handed Marcus a flash drive. Everything I could find. I've already sent copies to the FBI and the press, but I wanted you to have it too. You'll know what to do with it. He started to leave, then turned back. Your daughter, what she did at the courthouse offering my father mercy, even as he threatened her. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. It made me brave enough to come forward. After he left, Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. He seemed sad. His father did terrible things. That's hard to live with. But he's not his father. No, he's not. Then we should help him. That's what the red thread means. We're all connected, even to the sad people. Marcus looked at his daughter, this little philosopher, who understood forgiveness better than most adults and felt his heart swell with pride and pain. She was so much like Grace, seeing the best in people, insisting on kindness even when it was hard. That night, Marcus reviewed the files Alex Morrison had provided. It was worse than he'd imagined. 15 companies across 5 states, all running the same playbook as Titan Properties. Buildings marked for renovation acceleration. Inspectors on payroll. Insurance policies updated just before fires. He called Sarah Volkov. I'm sending you something. You're going to want a whole task force for this. How bad? Remember when we thought Titan was the only one, they were just the most obvious. This is systemic. Jesus, how many buildings are at risk? At least 60 in immediate danger, maybe hundreds more. Send everything. We'll mobilize tonight. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the renovated community center that had once been a Titan Properties death trap, watching 42 new butterfly defense instructors demonstrate de-escalation techniques to a crowd of eager students. The walls were covered with photos, buildings that had been saved, families that had been protected, corruption that had been exposed. Emma sat in the front row, no longer his little girl, but somehow both smaller and larger than life. The courthouse incident had aged her in ways that broke Marcus's heart, but it had also given her a purpose that burned bright. She'd started a program at her school, teaching other kids to recognize danger signs in buildings, to document problems, to speak up when adults wouldn't listen. The children call it Butterfly Squad, Principal Martinez had told him. They've identified 17 safety violations we'd missed. Your daughter is training an army of tiny inspectors. Now Emma was demonstrating the red thread ceremony, showing new students how to tie them with intention, with purpose, with the understanding that each thread was a promise to protect not just yourself, but your community. My mom died because people stayed quiet, Emma told the crowd, her voice clear and strong. My dad fights because staying quiet kills people. The red thread means you're choosing to speak up, to stand up, to fix things instead of ignoring them. Marcus felt a hand on his shoulder. Catherine Kim stood beside him, looking healthier than she had during the trial. The nightmares had faded, she'd told him, replaced by the satisfaction of knowing she'd made a difference. The Grace Chen Foundation got approval for 12 more investigations this week, she said quietly. We're finding Titan Properties clones everywhere we look. Good. Keep looking. Marcus, there's something else. The FBI wants to formalize what we're doing. Create an actual federal task force with you as civilian director. Real authority, real resources, real power to shut down these operations. I already have a job. Running the city's safety committee, teaching butterfly defense, raising Emma, and somehow still finding time to personally inspect buildings at night. I know, but this would let you do all of that on a national scale. Before Marcus could respond, a commotion erupted near the entrance. 3 men in expensive suits had entered, their bearing, screaming corporate lawyers. The room tensed, hands moving to phones to record people positioning themselves between the suits and the children. The butterfly defense in action: create witnesses, protect the vulnerable, document everything. The lead lawyer held up his hands in a gesture of peace. We're not here to cause trouble. We represent Stronghold Properties. Our CEO would like to speak with Mr. Chen. Your CEO can make an appointment, Diana said, stepping forward. She'd been teaching a women's self-defense class and still had the protective gear on, making her look particularly intimidating. Please, the lawyer said. It's important. We're not like Titan. We want to prove that. Marcus studied them, then nodded to Diana to let them through. They approached, nervously aware that dozens of phones were recording their every move. Mr. Chen, I'm David Park, Chief Legal Counsel for Stronghold. Our CEO, Michelle Williams, has been following your work. She wants to implement your safety protocols across all our properties voluntarily before regulation forces us to. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, and frankly because we've seen what happens to companies that don't. Titan Properties wasn't just destroyed in court, they were destroyed in the marketplace. No one wants to rent from killers. He handed Marcus a thick folder. Every property we own, complete inspection reports, areas of concern highlighted. We want you to audit us publicly, thoroughly. If we pass, we get to use a Butterfly Defense certified seal. If we fail, we fix everything you identify. Marcus flipped through the documents, his trained eye catching real transparency, not the sanitized versions companies usually provided. And if I find something criminal, you report it like you would anywhere else. We'd rather face consequences now than bodies later. It was a smart move, get ahead of the reform wave, turn compliance into a marketing advantage. But smart or not, it would save lives. I'll review these, Marcus said. But I work with a team now. Full transparency means public reports, published inspections, tenant interviews. You sure your board is ready for that? They will be, or they'll be replaced. Ms. Williams has majority control and a very clear vision. No more Grace Chens, no more Jade Gardens, no more preventable tragedies. After they left, Master Lu approached, moving with the careful grace of someone whose body was finally admitting to 7 decades of use. You've started something that's growing beyond you, he observed. That was always the plan, wasn't it? Make myself unnecessary by teaching everyone else to do what I do. Lou watched Emma teaching a group of younger children how to fold paper butterflies. She's growing beyond you, too. I know. Does that frighten you? Marcus considered the question. 6 months ago, he would have said yes. The thought of Emma facing danger of her following in his footsteps into confrontation and risk would have terrified him. But now, she's not me, Marcus said. She's not her mother. She's something new, something better. She sees the connections we miss, finds mercy, where we find only anger. If she's growing beyond me, maybe that's exactly what the world needs. Sarah Volkoff arrived as the evening session was starting, looking official in her FBI windbreaker but smiling. Morrison's sentencing is tomorrow, she announced to the room. Life without parole, consecutive sentences for each death. He'll never see freedom again. Applause rippled through the crowd, but it was subdued. Victory over one monster didn't resurrect the dead or heal the wounded. It just prevented future wounds. There's more, Sarah continued. 15 arrests this morning across 3 states, all based on intelligence from the Butterfly Watchers Network. Buildings evacuated, families relocated, disasters prevented. The system is working. Marcus felt Emma's hand slip into his. She'd appeared beside him silently, a skill she'd picked up from Lou. Are you happy, Daddy? She asked quietly. Happy isn't the right word. Satisfied, maybe. Hopeful. Mom would be proud. Of you, especially. Of us, she corrected. We're a team. The evening progressed with demonstrations, testimonials, and training. Marcus watched it all with a strange sense of displacement, seeing something he'd started in grief and rage transform into something larger, something healing. Tommy Nguyen was teaching medical response how to help someone escape from smoke inhalation. Diana Foster demonstrated how to break windows safely, how to create exit routes when doors were blocked. James Okonkwo explained tenant rights, what to document, how to build legal cases against negligent landlords. And through it all, Emma moved like a small ambassador, translating adult concepts for children, creating games that taught serious lessons, making safety training feel like empowerment rather than fear. Mr. Chen, a young woman approached holding a baby. Marcus recognized her, one of the tenants from a building they'd evacuated last month, just days before a mysterious electrical fire that would have killed dozens. I wanted you to meet someone, she said, holding up the baby. This is Grace. Grace Marcus Thompson, named after your wife and you. If you hadn't found those code violations, hadn't forced the evacuation. She couldn't finish, tears stopping her words. Marcus looked at the baby, this small life that existed, because he'd chosen to channel his grief into action and felt something shift inside him. For 4 years, he'd been fighting against something, against corruption, against negligence, against the system that had killed his wife. But somewhere along the way, it had become fighting for something, for families like this, for futures that deserve to exist, for the simple right to be safe in your own home. She's beautiful, he managed to say. Do you want to hold her? Marcus accepted the baby carefully, this tiny person named after ghost and guardian both. Baby Grace gurgled, tiny fingers wrapping around his thumb with surprising strength. Emma peered at the baby with interest. She has fighter's hands. Look how strong her grip is. All babies grip like that, Marcus said, but Emma shook her head. No, this one's special. She's already holding on tight to life. She knows how precious it is. The mother smiled through her tears. We're moving to a Stronghold Properties building, one of the ones you're going to inspect. We figured if you're checking it, it must be safe. No building is perfectly safe, Marcus said carefully. But we can make them safer. We can make sure people are watching, checking, maintaining. We can make sure that when something goes wrong, it's actually an accident, not murder, disguised as negligence. As the evening wound down, Marcus found himself on the roof of the community center looking out over the city. Emma had fallen asleep on a bench, exhausted from teaching and demonstrating. Someone had covered her with a jacket, probably Liu, who stood nearby like a guardian statue. The mayor called, Liu said. The city council voted unanimously. Your safety committee is now permanent with a budget and subpoena power. You've officially got teeth. Teeth are only useful if you're willing to bite. And you've proven you will. That's why it works. Fear and respect and balance the way it should be. Catherine Kim joined them on the roof, holding 3 cups of tea from the shop next door. I've been thinking about Ahmad, she said, about how he died because he helped me. His family is suing Titan's insurance companies, but that won't bring him back. Nothing will, Marcus said gently. No, but we can make his death mean something more. I want to create an award in his name, the Ahmad Patel Courage Award for people who risk everything to expose corruption. Make him remembered as a hero, not just a victim. He'd like that. He always wanted to make a difference. They stood in comfortable silence, three people bound by tragedy and purpose, watching the city lights twinkle like ground-level stars. Somewhere out there in buildings they'd never see, people were sleeping safely because of the work they'd done. Children were growing up with parents who might have died in preventable fires. Families were whole that could have been shattered. We can't save them all, Catherine said, as if reading Marcus's thoughts. No, he agreed. But we can save more than we did yesterday, and tomorrow we'll save more than today. That has to be enough. Emma stirred, sitting up with the disoriented look of a child woken from deep sleep. Are we going home? She asked. Soon, baby. Just watching the city for a bit. She walked to the edge of the roof and pulled out a handful of paper butterflies from her pocket. She always had them like a magician with endless scarves. What are you doing? Marcus asked. Sending them out, she said, releasing the butterflies into the wind. They caught the breeze, spiraling up and out, white shapes dancing against the dark sky. Like messages. Maybe someone who needs hope will find one. One butterfly caught an updraft, soaring higher than the others, disappearing into the night sky like a prayer made visible. That one's for Mom, Emma said quietly. So she knows we're okay. Marcus pulled his daughter close. This remarkable child who'd faced down killers with kindness, who'd turned their tragedy into purpose, who saw the world not as it was, but as it could be. She knows, baby. She knows. The next morning brought Morrison's sentencing. The courthouse was packed, every seat filled, crowds outside, watching on large screens the city had set up. Marcus sat in the same spot he'd held throughout the trial, Emma beside him, the weight of the moment heavy on his shoulders. Morrison stood as the judge read the sentence, 43 consecutive life sentences. No possibility of parole, the maximum penalty for each count of murder. He looked older, grayer, diminished. The man who'd burned buildings for profit was now just another number in the system he'd manipulated for so long. Does the defendant have anything to say? Judge Weinstein asked. Morrison turned to face the gallery, his eyes finding Marcus. I was a businessman, he said. I maximized profit and minimized cost. That's what the system rewards. I just did it better than most. You murdered 43 people, the judge said coldly. I relocated obstacles to development. The system allowed it, encouraged it, rewarded it. I'm not the disease, I'm just a symptom. He sat down, apparently thinking he'd made some profound point, but Emma stood up, her small voice carrying through the courtroom. You're wrong, she said. Judge Weinstein looked like she might gavel for order, but something in Emma's face stopped her. The system didn't make you chain doors shut. The system didn't make you disable sprinklers. The system didn't make you burn buildings with people inside. You chose that. Every time you chose cruelty over kindness, profit over people, the system might be sick, but you chose to be the sickness instead of the cure. She sat back down, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. Then someone started clapping, one of the victim's family members. Others joined in until the courthouse rang with applause for an 8-year-old girl who'd spoken truth to power. Judge Weinstein waited for quiet, then nodded to Emma. Young lady, you just summarized what this entire trial has been about better than any lawyer in this room. Thank you. She turned to Morrison. You will die in prison, Mr. Morrison. You will die alone, forgotten your legacy, nothing but a cautionary tale about the cost of greed. Court is adjourned. As Morrison was led away in shackles, he passed close to Marcus and Emma. For just a moment, their eyes met the killer and the child who'd offered him mercy. The butterfly, Morrison said suddenly. The paper butterfly she gave me. I still have it. The guards paused, uncertain. It's the only clean thing I have left, Morrison continued, his voice breaking. The only thing that wasn't about money or power or control. A little girl's mercy for a monster. I'll die with it in my cell, the only proof that someone once thought I could be better than I was. Then he was gone, shuffled away to begin a sentence that would end only with his death. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had grown to thousands. Red threads everywhere, paper butterflies pinned to coats and bags, signs reading, "Justice for the 43," and "Never again," and "Butterfly Defense Forever." Marcus tried to leave quietly, but the crowd recognized them parting like a sea creating a corridor of respect. People reached out to touch them as they passed, not aggressively, just seeking connection, affirmation that heroes were real, and walked among them. "Mr. Chen Emma." They turned to find Alex Morrison pushing through the crowd. Frank Morrison's son looked haggard but determined. "I know you probably don't want to see me." "It's okay," Emma interrupted. "You're not him." Alex knelt down to her level. "I wanted to give you something." He pulled out a folder thick with documents. Every building my father ever touched, every inspector he bribed, every official he corrupted, names, dates, amounts. I've been gathering evidence for months. Marcus took the folder, feeling its weight, not just physical but moral. This was Alex's complete betrayal of his father, his choosing of justice over blood. "Why?" Marcus asked. "Because she was right." Alex looked at Emma. "At the courthouse when you offered him mercy. It broke something in me, or maybe fixed something. I realized I had a choice: be his son or be someone's salvation. I choose salvation." He stood to leave, then turned back. "I'm applying to be a butterfly defense instructor. I know you probably won't accept me, but—" "Thursday nights," Marcus said. "Beginner's class. We'll see if you're serious." Alex's face transformed with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you. I won't let you down." As he disappeared into the crowd, Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "That was kind of you. Everyone deserves a chance to choose better, even the sons of monsters." They made their way home through streets that felt different somehow. Safer, maybe, or just more connected. Marcus noticed things: red threads in shop windows, butterfly decals on doors, signs reading, "This building inspected by butterfly watchers." The movement had become self-sustaining, growing beyond anything he'd imagined. Their apartment building had a crowd outside, not reporters this time, but neighbors. Mrs. Chen from next door, still no relation, had organized a celebration. Tables lined the street laden with food from every culture represented in their building. Music played from speakers, children ran between adults' legs, and everyone wore red threads. "We wanted to celebrate," Mrs. Chen explained. "Not just the verdict, but what you've built. This building, this block, this neighborhood, we're all connected now. We watch out for each other. That's because of you." Marcus wanted to deflect, to minimize, but Emma squeezed his hand. "Say thank you, Daddy. It's okay to be appreciated." So he said thank you, and they joined the celebration. Marcus found himself teaching an impromptu butterfly defense class to interested neighbors. Emma showed children how to fold butterflies from napkins. The evening stretched on, full of laughter and connection, and the kind of community that arose from shared purpose. As the sun set, Marcus stood on their fire escape, which the building had finally fixed properly after his third inspection report, and watched the city prepare for night. Emma sat beside him, folding another butterfly from the evening's program. "Do you think Mom can see this?" she asked. "I don't know, baby. I hope so. I think she can. I think she sees every person we help, every building we save, every butterfly we send into the world. And I think she's proud." Marcus pulled his daughter close, this remarkable child who'd transformed their grief into grace. "You know what tomorrow is?" he asked. "Tuesday. The anniversary, 4 years since the fire." Emma was quiet for a moment. "Are we going to be sad?" "Probably, but maybe we can be other things too. Grateful for the time we had with her, proud of what we've built from the loss, hopeful about what comes next. Can we visit her?" "Of course. And can we bring butterflies? Lots of them, so many that the cemetery looks like a garden." Marcus smiled. "We can bring all the butterflies you want." That night, as Emma slept, Marcus sat at his computer drafting his response to the FBI's offer. He would accept, but with conditions. The work would be transparent. The communities affected would have a voice, and Emma would always come first. He looked at the butterfly bird painting on the wall, Grace's last work completed by their clumsy but loving hands. It wasn't what she'd envisioned, probably, but it was what they'd managed together. Imperfect, but meaningful. Broken, but beautiful. His phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. 8 more buildings evacuated tonight based on Butterfly Watcher reports. No casualties. The system is working. Then another from Sarah Volkov. 17 states want to implement butterfly defense programs. You started a revolution. Master Liu. Proud of you. Rest well. Tomorrow brings new battles. Diana. Bar tomorrow night. The whole crew. We need to celebrate before you become too famous to hang out with us. Tommy. My daughter wants to be Emma when she grows up. I told her to aim higher. Emma's just getting started. James. 3 more companies requesting voluntary inspection programs. Your model is becoming the standard. Marcus set the phone aside and walked to Emma's room, watching her sleep. She'd kicked off her covers as usual, one arm hanging off the bed, the other clutching a paper butterfly she'd been working on. He tucked her back in, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "Thank you for saving me, baby. After Mom died, I was drowning. You threw me a line made of red thread and pulled me back to shore." In the morning, they would visit Grace's grave. In the afternoon, he would accept the FBI position. In the evening, they would teach more people to protect themselves and others. But for now, in the quiet darkness, Marcus Chen stood guard over his daughter's sleep, the red threads on his wrist catching the nightlight's glow, a reminder that connection was the only real protection anyone had. Somewhere in the city, people were tying red threads around their wrists. Somewhere children were learning to fold paper butterflies. Somewhere buildings were being inspected by ordinary people who'd decided that staying silent was no longer acceptable. The butterfly defense had become more than a fighting technique or a movement. It had become a philosophy. We are all connected. What happens to one happens to all. Together we can transform tragedy into purpose, grief into grace, brokenness into beauty. And in a small apartment in Queens, a father and daughter who'd lost everything had found a way to give everyone hope. The cracked porcelain spoon sat on Marcus's nightstand, its fracture now familiar, comforting even. Still broken after all these months, still useful when needed, still ready to defend those who couldn't defend themselves. Some things Marcus had learned were stronger for having been broken. Some things could only become what they were meant to be after they'd been shattered and rebuilt. And sometimes the maintenance man really was the most important person in the room, not because he could fight, but because he could see what was broken and wasn't afraid to fix it. The city slept a million lights twinkling like ground-level stars, each one a life, a story, a potential tragedy or triumph. Marcus Chen, maintenance man turned protector. Father turned symbol. Closed his eyes and dreamed of butterflies carrying buildings away from fires of red threads, connecting every soul in the city of his wife's smile and his daughter's courage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new corruptions to expose new lives to save. But tonight, they were safe. They were together. They were enough. And in the end, that's all any of us can hope for, to be enough for the people who need us to stand up. When standing is dangerous to offer mercy, when justice would be easier to rebuild, when everything has burned. The red threads held, the butterflies flew, the broken things proved useful, and the story, like all true stories, didn't end. It transformed.